line, goal line. I left tight wing, 70 chip on white. Ready?
Here comes the diesel. Here comes the diesel. Should come with John Riggins right up the middle.
One! Hunt!
There's the snap, and to Riggins. Good hold. He's got the first down to the 40. He's gone. The 35, the 30, the 20. He's gone. He's gone. Touchdown, Washington Redskins.
Sammy spots the receiver as he throws the ball back behind his ear and lets it fly.
Sonny Jurgensen, one of the foremost bombardiers in the NFL.
Mike Monk is now the most prolific pass receiver in the National Football League.
If guys will talk football off the field and on the bus and on the plane, but you'll find out that a group of winners will do that.
Just remember this, 40 men together can't lose, okay?
As if by cue, the crowd comes alive.
I would like to give the Redskins fans the type of team that I think that they would be proud of.
Starts with teams. Let's hit it rolling now. Let's earn this thing today.
My goal is to win every game, try and win every single one of them.
This afternoon, we're going to play the biggest football game in the history of Western civilization. I've seen a virtuoso performance.
I hope he puts to bed once and for all about the black athlete.
It's Landry, another interception.
He's taking the leadership of this club.
Going right to Cooley. Touchdown! Touchdown, Redskins!
With a market value exceeding $1 billion, today's Washington Redskins bear little resemblance to the shoestring operation that began back in 1932, when D.C. businessman George Preston Marshall purchased the team.
Marshall was always crazy about sports. He used to go out to the baseball games pretty nearly every day. And when this opportunity came to buy the franchise to get in the National Football League, he grabbed it.
The team began operations in Boston and called itself the Braves. Gaining entry into the league was neither difficult nor expensive.
The NFL required two different payments. One was a basic $1,500 fee, and the other one was a $1,500 guarantee that the team would complete its first season in Boston. Years later, Marshall said that he never paid either fee. To quote him, he said, "We never paid a dime for the franchise, just picked it up for the asking and the willingness to underwrite the losses." So he got it for free.
There was a reason for the bargain asking price. The NFL was struggling to survive, needing owners with capital and vision. George Preston Marshall possessed both.
It was the summer of 1933. The National Football League had been reduced to 7 franchises. We knew something had to be done. I had talked at the coaches' meeting to the late Glenn Warner and to Dick Hanley, who was then coaching in Northwestern. They recommended rules changes.
Marshall convinced the league to accept these changes, steps that opened up offensive play while creating divisional rivalries. These innovations allowed George to showcase the league's top halfback, number 20, Cliff Battles.
He was a Phi Beta Kappa, by the way, out of West Virginia Wesleyan, and Marshall signed him. He was with the franchise in their first season in Boston in 1932. He hit holes really hard. He had great breakaway speed. He ran for more than 200 yards. He ran for 215 yards in a 1933 game, which held as a Redskins record for nearly 60 years.
Battles would eventually be enshrined in the Hall of Fame, alongside the behemoth who blocked for him.
Turk Edwards was one of the first great linemen in the NFL. His nickname was the Rock of Gibraltar. He was 6'2", 260 pounds, which was enormous for that day. He was just a great player, devastating blocker and tackler.
Edwards and Battles led the team, now called the Redskins, to its first division title in 1936. Unfortunately, few local fans either knew or cared.
And Marshall, who was quite a promoter, bought all the papers. And there wasn't anything on the first page about the football team winning the Eastern Championship, but the Boston papers was filled with the fact that the girls' hockey team had won the championship of Greater Boston.
By not getting that coverage and exposure, not a lot of Bostonians knew about his team, and the turnout was skimpy, and he was losing money. So Marshall decided to lobby the NFL to have the championship game played at the Polo Grounds. And the Redskins played the Packers at the Polo Grounds that year. They had a nice turnout. The Packers won the game, but Marshall knew at that time that because of his losses and because of his dislike for the Boston media and fans, that he was going to move the team.
It was Marshall's wife, former silent film actress Corinne Griffith, who suggested he move the team to his hometown.
Corinne thought Washington would be a great market for professional football and tended to take credit for the fact that the team moved from Boston to Washington. She always told George that, look, you've got a market here in Washington where everybody's from someplace else and they're always looking for something to do on weekends. So why don't you give them professional football? She used to tell George that the D.C. in Washington, D.C. stood for displaced citizens. That's what Washington was full of.
Here comes the Washington squad. They're pretty strong and plenty tough. Here's Coach Red Flaherty with some of the boys, anxious to put on a good exhibition for the benefit of owner George Marshall.
George Marshall was the type of a fellow that liked to get a lot of publicity. He didn't care what they said about him as long as he got his name in the paper. George would make a lot of noise and say, I did this in the paper, I did that, but he would never make a move of any kind until I okayed it. He came down to the bench one time in Philadelphia, and somebody tapped me on the shoulder, and I looked around, it was George Marshall. And he says, Ray, we got to win this game. I said, George, that's what I'm trying to do. I said, you go back up and sit in those stands, because if you don't, you take the football team, pay me off, and I'll go on home.
Marshall found much better use for his money when he convinced the nation's top college player to join the Redskins in Washington.
One passing threat is slinging Sammy Ball, who made history at Texas Christian University. This is the grip, with fingers spread wide, that gives the maximum control in passing. Sammy spots the receiver as he draws the ball back behind his ear and lets it fly.
It was an incredible break in timing for a guy like Sammy Baugh to join the Redskins at a time when they were just starting out in the Washington market. This guy was a guy who changed football with the way he threw the ball. And Marshall was at least smart enough with his limited football knowledge to realize that he needed a quarterback like that if he was going to sell tickets and if he was going to be successful.
Mr. Marshall, he was the boss over everything. He had his own ideas, and it was his ball club, and he ran it that way. I was flying to Washington to sign a contract, and Mr. Marshall told me to wear a cowboy hat and boots and have a little Western flair there, and I did. But at that time, I didn't wear boots. I didn't wear a cowboy hat at that time.
Flaherty put Sammy in the starting lineup with Cliff Battles and future Hall of Fame receiver Wayne Milner.
Interesting stat about Wayne Milner. He might have gotten more mileage out of one game than any receiver in NFL history. 37 championship game against the Bears. He catches 2 long touchdown passes in the third quarter, 78-yarder and a 55-yarder. In all the years since, only one other receiver has caught 2 touchdown passes of 50 or more yards in an NFL championship game.
Needing a touchdown to win, Baugh sends along with Wayne Milner. He collects it and skims along the frozen turf. And the Redskins win the 1937 World Championship.
The nation's capital reveled in its first NFL title, but the celebration did not last very long.
We win the championship. Battles led the league in ground gaining that year. The next year, we went to training camp. Battles wanted $3,000. Did you ever stop and think how much a raise he was asking for? $250 raise. Led the league in ground gaining, and Marshall wouldn't give it to him. He quit football, Battles did, went to Columbia's backfield coach, and he was the best runner in the league.
Now Baugh was the centerpiece of the offense.
The Washington Redskins, world champions in 1937, and possessed of one of the finest combined passing and running attacks any football team ever had.
We were the first team to have a good short passing game. That's a whole damn story. Nobody else had a good short passing game. We set out to make them stop our passing game first, where we could run on them. That was our philosophy.
Defending Sammy Baugh was almost an impossible situation. People that saw him play, I'm sure, will agree with me on that, because he threw the ball from a running position many times as he took the ball from center, faking into the people, flaring out and going deep, and made the defense a very tough situation.
But Baugh was more than simply the league's first great quarterback. Slingin' Sam became the NFL's biggest box office draw.
He had a charisma to attract fans. I remember in Philadelphia at Shai Park that when we played, and Sammy Baugh was playing in those days, when we played the Redskins, that we turned down out on Lehigh Avenue in front of Shai, we turned down 15,000 people at the gate, couldn't get in.
Sammy became a pop culture icon, socializing with Hollywood personalities and starring in cowboy movies. No pro football player was better known or more widely respected.
When you're on the field, you got to feel like you're the best son of a bitches out there. That's what you're thinking, that nobody did damn better than I am. Now, when you get off the field, you don't think that way. You're just a football player and you did your job, and that's about what it amounted to.
From the late 30s until the end of World War II, the Redskins made 6 title appearances in 10 years. Their star players were as familiar to DC fans as the president.
Straight as an arrow to Anvil Andy Farkas, the record-breaking halfback from the University of Detroit and one of the league's leading ground gainers.
I had Frankie Filchuk was one left halfback and Sammy Baugh was the other. And when I would put Sammy Baugh in there, I would put Farkas in that backfield, who weighed about 215 pounds, kind of run like hell. He would do practically all the running, and Baugh wouldn't have to run with the ball much.
Farkas occasionally played without a helmet, a practice that produced concussive repercussions.
He was nearly knocked unconscious, and the Washington Post reported that Farkas, when he was regaining his senses, said, "I would sure like to play in a game like that." So he didn't even realize that he had been instrumental in the Redskins' victory.
Farkas continued to pick up yardage with or without headgear, as did other talented backfield mates that included Dick Todd, number 41.
The Redskins' offense was ahead of its time in that Sammy liked to throw to his running backs. If you look at their statistics from that period, invariably the leading receiver on the team is a running back. Whether it was Todd, Steve Begaris later in the 40s, Wilbur Moore was another guy. Wilbur Moore once caught 200 yards worth of passes in a game as a running back. They weren't just leading the team in receiving either. They were ranking the top 4 or 5 in yardage in the league for receivers. So he used his running backs a lot. That's how they moved the football down the field.
In 1940, the Redskins won their 3rd Eastern title, earning the right to play the Chicago Bears for the league championship.
2 weeks previously, the Redskins beat them 7-3. Subsequently, George Marshall, the owner of the Washington Redskins at that time, plastered his newspapers with stories about the Bears being crybabies over losing that game. And George Halas took every newspaper clip in which the Bears were denounced as crybabies and immature and so forth. And that was really his pep talk before the game. He said, "You see these statements up here? You see what they say about you? You're the best team in football, but you got to prove it today."
Chicago scored on its first possession, the opening salvo to the most lopsided game in NFL history.
I think we made more first downs in the game than they did, but they made all the scores. We just kept throwing the ball, and the Bears kept picking it off.
They kicked so many balls in the stands. The only thing we had left there was an old round ball that the water boy had. So I went to Sid Luckman. I said, "Sid, don't kick this. God, that's the last ball we don't." He said, "Okay, Frank, we won't." They passed it and completed it. That was just one of those days. Everything went right.
With the score 60-0, as I recall, the field announcer made the announcement that, "Ladies and gentlemen, now is the time to get your season tickets for next year." 60-0 was the score, and the uproar all pointed at George Marshall sitting in an open box. They started to pelt him with everything possible and boo him. Everybody on the field got a chuckle out of it.
But no one was laughing at the announcements made a year later, when a Griffith Stadium crowd filled with military brass took in the final game of the 1941 season.
The murmuring that was going through the stand, Admiral Knox and Secretary Stimson, report to your offices. We need you to get back there right away. General so-and-so being called to his office, Admiral so-and-so, and walking off the field at the half. I said, so what's all the noise going for? They said, well, the Japanese bombed Pearl Harbor. And I thought, well, where the hell is Pearl Harbor?
December 7th, 1941, a date which will live in infamy. The United States of America was suddenly and deliberately attacked by naval and air forces of the Empire of Japan.
The nation's capital became the center of the war effort. Even with the manpower call-up, there was still enough talent on the Washington roster to reach the 1942 title game, and a chance for the Redskins to avenge their humiliating loss to Chicago 2 years earlier.
The Bears had about the same team they had in 40, but we had quite a few new fellas. We'd lost Turk Edwards, we'd lost Jim Barber, 2 all-league tackles, we'd lost Wayne Milner, and quite a few of our football players, and I had some new fellas in there, and I gave them a pretty good pep talk. We'd won all our games except the first one. We hadn't lost a game all year, so they were in a good mental frame of mind when we played the Bears in 1942. They just kicked the hell out of them. The Bears never had a chance. They never got inside of our 40-yard line.
The Redskins just had revenge on their minds, but they were running into a Bears team that was 11-0, great offense, great defense, the monsters of the Midway, and for the Redskins to be able to pull off a victory that day, that ranks up there with the greatest upsets of all time.
The Redskins continued as the NFL's dominant team during the war years, even after Ray Flaherty joined the Navy. Washington's coach was gone, but its passers still wore a uniform of burgundy, not khaki.
Sammy Boyle was one of those players who didn't go off to the service. He had a deferment because he owned a cattle ranch in Texas and was considered an essential industry for the war effort, so he was allowed to stay behind and run the ranch. But he, of course, played for the Redskins on weekends, and he flew up to Washington. He would be flying back and forth between Washington and Texas. There were still quite a few quality players playing in the NFL at that point. And in 1943, he leads the league in punting, leads the league in touchdown passes, leads the league in interceptions. I mean, that's a trifecta that I don't think anybody's come close to. I mean, he was a pretty good defensive back.
The one I was more proud of, many of them, was a record that intercepted 4 passes in one ball game and passed for 4 touchdowns against Detroit one time. So I was the weakest one, so they worked on me, and that gave me a lot of opportunity to intercept passes.
Despite Baugh's record-setting performance, the Redskins were routed by the Bears in the 1943 championship game. But after a subpar season in 1944, Washington rebounded in 45, winning the East on the strength of a defense that posted 3 shutouts. The Redskins' reward, an all-expenses-paid trip to the coldest title game in NFL history.
King Winter takes over for the Pro Football Championship playoff at icy Cleveland Stadium. Keeping warm is the big problem, and here's one way of solving it. The Cleveland Rams are cold. The Washington Redskins are cold. And shiver my timbers if the crowd isn't cold.
I guess that was the coldest day that I could remember playing. The field's icy as a bad field. That was a terrible game. I'm sure everybody played in that game but didn't enjoy it too much.
Sub-zero weather doomed Washington to a frustrating loss, and it would be nearly 3 decades before another Redskins team appeared in a playoff game. By the autumn of 1945, war-weary Washingtonians were eager for a return to normal life.
35,000 are on hand, including the wounded, and General Eisenhower to see the cash and carry boys in the nation's capital.
Sammy Baugh was still slinging, But Redskins owner George Preston Marshall had elected not to bring back Ray Flaherty as head coach.
Flaherty had probably a lot more autonomy than the coaches who followed him. The coaches who followed him tended to be puppets of Marshall, former players sometimes, people with not quite the reputation that Flaherty had developed. And Marshall ran the show, and he wasn't equipped to run the show. He wasn't a football guy. He hadn't played the game. I'm not sure how great an eye for talent he had. And the franchise's fortunes reflected that in the later years.
The Redskins posted only one winning season over the next 7 years, but Marshall made sure his team was tops in halftime entertainment.
George Preston Marshall thought football games should be a spectacle, that the game wasn't enough. He thought that was one thing that football was really doing a poor job of when he came into the league.
He said that he geared all of his ideas in running the Redskin operation on the single thought that the game had to be made acceptable to the women, to the wives, to the mothers. That if they would only come out to the game in their best clothes, then the Redskins would be a financial success.
And he felt that the way to do that would be to bring in acts during halftime, jugglers, symphony orchestras.
Very interesting show that George Preston Marshall and Mrs. Corinne Griffith Marshall put on at halftime each and every Sunday afternoon in Washington. Certainly the finest show in professional football and one of the greatest shows in sports anywhere.
He'd been in vaudeville, and he knew how to put on a game with a band and all those things. In fact, he spent far more time with a band than he did with a football team.
The Redskins band, oldest and best in pro football, is a familiar and beloved part of the Redskins organization.
Marshall's showmanship reached its peak each Christmas with a spectacular entrance by Kris Kringle.
He'd cart Santa Claus in once a year. I think he was the first NFL owner. This is a first for George. I think he was the first NFL owner to bring Santa Claus in a helicopter.
He brought him to go flying in one time and parachute him into the field. It was kind of windy that day. He came across that little bit of the field floating. He landed on a house about 2 blocks away from that field. Everybody, it just killed everybody. They just died laughing. It was funny. It was funny. It's funny to me now when I think about it.
Put it on top of the buildings back here in the wind blew. But how smart he was. He had a substitute on under there. Here he comes out, see? And Marshall, he put on the show.
Marshall was a showman, and he was also a businessman. He made money. He felt that there wasn't any business of being sportsman or like it at all. He says, you never get in trouble paying good ball players good money. He said, where you get fouled up is playing lousy ball players good money.
Marshall's money was well spent on Dudley, number 35, whose 96-yard punt return is still the longest in franchise history. Dudley was also the beneficiary of the Redskins' most successful running play of the early 50s.
Herman Ball was a coach at this one particular year. He devised a double B block, which was myself and a guard blocking this tackle. And there was a fake man coming in one side, he went out the other side, created a good hole, and we went up and down the field all day long.
Joining Dudley in the backfield was highly touted collegiate star Charlie Choo Choo Justice, number 22.
Choo Choo Justice was a 2-time runner-up for the Heisman Trophy. Just a thrilling runner. A song was written about him by famed band leader Benny Goodman called All the Way Choo Choo. He was featured in national magazines such as Life magazine, and the Redskins drafted him in 1950. He posted some nice numbers, but he didn't do as well in the pros as he did in college.
Even so, Choo Choo drew some of the loudest ovations from Griffith Stadium fans, sometimes when he wasn't carrying the ball.
Hold your hat, for the fireworks are just beginning. A Redskin touchdown gels as Billy Wells fells the Cardinals with a dazzling dash of 79 yards to pay dirt. Charlie Justice cuts down the last defender as Wells makes the longest touchdown run in Redskin history.
Washington's greatest star of the post-war era was lanky Hugh Bones Taylor.
Bones Taylor, very wiry receiver, 6'4", 180, 190. He actually looked more like a basketball player than a football player. But once he caught a pass, he had these long strides, and it looked like he was galloping when he was running. And he was Sammy Ball's favorite receiver. Unique thing about Taylor is that he is known as the first true split end in the NFL. He would line up 4 or 5 yards off the end. That helped the Redskins in exploiting his talents.
Taylor's touchdowns were widely seen by fans when the Redskins became the first NFL team to broadcast all its games on television.
Come this fall, George Preston Marshall's Redskins will really be on the warpath with a great new team. Eddie and I, of course, will be right where the action is with play-by-play accounts live on television, brought to you by Amoco.
He set up a television network in the South that beamed Redskins games to a lot of the states that weren't necessarily close to Washington, and developed a huge following for the team and showed the other owners in the league how it was done. It was a great revenue source for them. The Redskins were immensely profitable.
What's the name of the man makes those wonderful pies?
Boyd Morris.
Boyd Morris. You could bring Boyd Morris a truckload of cherry pies, and everybody from Greensboro and Winston-Salem would play this game of Saturday night all over again.
Well, the Greensboro and Winston-Salem fans and throughout this area are always with you because of this thing we're doing right now, television.
The Redskins, fortunately, had such a terrific following through the South in the area of Washington, D.C. The requests were so numerous to broadcast. A lot of owners argued, George, you're giving the game away. We're trying to sell football. We're not trying to give it away. And Marshall's remark, this is a thing will make you people millionaires one of these days.
By the 1950s, a Redskins franchise that had once ranked among the NFL's elite was now an unruly rabble without direction or discipline.
The early Redskin days that I was there were not really well organized. The meetings were often called early because the coaches, quote, wanted to beat the traffic, unquote. You could make up plays in the huddle, and you had a lot of leeway in what you did because I don't think they looked at movies particularly, and so there wasn't anyone with control over you.
LeBaron often appeared to be running plays that had been drawn up in the dirt. In reality, the calls were made out of self-preservation by the league's tiniest passer.
Mr. Marshall didn't want a short quarterback. So in the programs in those days, initially I was 5'10" and 180 when we started, and gradually they finally talked him into putting my true size down to 5'7" and 160.
LeBaron is only a half pint, but he causes the opposition more trouble than a full court. Joe Walton makes the catch and fights for the touchdown.
What I couldn't do is if people were right on top of me just with an arm throw it down the field 30 or 40 yards. That's why I went to more run fake type plays or half rolls or roll out type of things, so where I'd have a little more room to throw the ball.
Eddie wasn't bashful running with the ball either, even with defenders twice his size in pursuit.
He had a lot of guts, and he'd been a Marine captain in Korea and had got the Purple Heart and all kinds of medals. But I mean, he was that kind of guy. In fact, the coaches just went crazy because he wouldn't back off, and he wouldn't run out of bounds, but he was tough.
He went back to throw a pass, and you talk about a blind side. Norman Wild Man Willie played for us. I mean, he was a tough monster. He hit Eddie LeBaron from behind. I thought the guy was dead. He got up, and to my amazement, he looked at Willie, and he smiled at him. Smiled at him. I said, look at this. I can't believe this stuff. Unbelievable. And he was like that all his career, and he was a great little quarterback.
LeBaron's best year was a second-place finish in 1955, thanks in large part to the leadership and innovation of new head coach Joe Kuharich.
Kuharich was the first coach in the NFL to use the 4-3 defense. What he did is he took Chuck Drazanovich, who was a Redskins middle guard and played in a down position, and had him step back a few feet and instructed him to play in a stand-up position as middle linebacker. And from what I understand, that was the first time that a coach had used the 4-3 defense in the NFL.
Another standout was defensive back Joe Scudero, number 28. Also the league's top kick returner.
Joe Scudero, he had originally played his college ball in San Francisco. He had played for Kuharich, actually, in San Francisco. He had a great season in 1955 as a kick returner. To this day, his kickoff return average is one of the best in Redskins history.
Scudero takes it on the 6. Behind solid interference, the former University of San Francisco star cuts to the sidelines. With a burst of speed, he fakes 2 giant defenders out of position and goes all the way to complete a sensational 94-yard touchdown.
Scudero also had an acting career off the field. He had roles in a popular TV series at the time, Gunsmoke and Dragnet, so he had that charisma to allow him to do that.
But the most beloved Redskin of the 1950s was defensive end Gene Brito, number 80. As good a person as he was a player.
A guy who came into the National Football League fairly late, he turned 26 when he was a rookie because he'd spent 3 years in the paratroopers during World War II. And started out actually as a receiver. The first couple of seasons he was an offensive end, did a pretty good job. But in his third year he switched over to defensive end, and that was where he really made his mark in the league. He was an All-Pro 5 seasons, a Pro Bowler 5 years.
One of the first defensive standouts to gain recognition was Gene Brito of the Redskins. Even the mighty Cleveland Browns were vulnerable to his rush.
Gino Marchetti, who played with the Colts at that time, who was in the Hall of Fame, we played together at college. I would consider Brito and him as the 2 best ends that I've been associated with in the NFL.
He played 7 years in the National Football League, and he'd never drawn a 15-yard penalty, ever. Can you imagine that? I mean, the guy should be in the Hall of Fame for that alone.
Off the field, he cared about his teammates. When a Redskins running back named Vic Janowitz suffered a serious car injury in the mid-50s, Brito started a fund for Janowitz. And Brito was actually a very popular player with Redskins fans. He was the most popular Redskin at the time, following Sammy Baugh.
They gave him a day in 1958, gave him a car. It was great. It was a cold December day, and he may have been the only guy in sports history who got a car on his day that had chains on the tires. Because apparently it was a snowy field, and it was the only way they got it on and off the field. So he got a new free car with chains.
You, with all of these other old-timers here, symbolize the spirit of the Redskins, a fighting spirit which means that win or lose, the Redskins are a great team to watch. And because you have symbolized that spirit, I present these keys to you today. Good luck in this their last game.
Nixon actually wasn't the only U.S. lawmaker to admire Brito. Brito was a favorite of John F. Kennedy when Kennedy was in the Senate. Nixon and Kennedy, who seemed to be on the opposite sides of the political spectrum when it came to nearly all issues, had a bipartisan view of Gene Brito. They both really admired the guy. He was their favorite player.
Among Nixon's other favorites included number 31, Don Bossler, a hard-charging fullback without fear, until he found himself across the negotiating table with the Redskins owner.
I was drafted number 1 back in 1956. Didn't know what an agent was at that time. I made 2 trips to D.C. to negotiate my own contract, and if you ever talked to George Preston Marshall, he was a fine gentleman, but his voice was so low, and when he'd bark, he'd scare you to death. He'd actually scare me to death.
The top player in 1958 made $12,000, and the salaries went down from there. They said one of our tackles from Tennessee, they paid him with a shotgun, with which he went out and shot a squirrel for dinner. And the only thing wrong with that, it's a true story. That's the true story. His wife was working, or he couldn't have played professional football.
Marshall's miserly ways may have been prompted by the first true threat to his lucrative television network. NFL expansion into southern markets George still considered to be Redskins territory.
There's no excuse for expansion in the National Football League. We furnish football now for free through television.
And in 1960, the NFL wanted to bring Dallas into the league. One of the ways the Dallas owners were able to strong-arm George into voting for a Dallas franchise was they went out and they bought the rights to Hail to the Redskins and threatened not to let George play at Redskin games until he agreed to let Dallas come into the league. And George, needing that song, having to have that song, relented and voted to let him into the league.
Marshall also felt threatened by sociological changes. Civil rights had become a major political issue by the late 1950s, even as Washington remained the NFL's only segregated team. Marshall was determined to keep the Redskins all white.
He had the same answer to all of them. He said, we're going to start playing black players when the Harlem Globetrotters start playing white players.
For many years, actually through the mid-60s, the Redskins were the southernmost NFL team. Marshall tried to capture the audience in the South. That was his territory.
Each season, the Redskins feature a Southern college band at halftime. In 1958, it's a colorful marching band from Mississippi Southern and the college's fancy-stepping Dixie Darlings.
His audience in the South was living in a very segregated society. Washington itself was a very segregated city and was just beginning to change a little bit in the latter part of that decade. And it made it difficult for him, business-wise, to bring a black player onto his team because he felt like he was alienating a lot of his fans in the South.
Marshall also feared the fans were no longer willing to accept the decaying environment at Griffith Stadium, so he lobbied vigorously for a new facility. By 1959, his efforts were rewarded with the groundbreaking of DC Stadium. But Marshall's success also brought about unintended consequences.
We did have on the books rules with regard to use of federal property and non-discrimination rules. I felt that I had to act. So I simply served notice on him that we were going to deny him the use of the stadium. As I recall it, this was either at the beginning or during the first season in 1961 when I was secretary, to let him go through that season, but we then put him on notice that he would not get to use the stadium unless he had abandoned his discrimination policy.
Within a year, the Redskins would be black as well as white. The Redskins began the 1961 season in a new home and would be led by a new coach, former staff assistant Bill McPeak.
He was a guy who'd played defensive end for the Steelers in the 40s and 50s, so he was a good football guy, and he had a pretty good eye for talent. If you look at those teams in the early 60s that the Redskins had, he'd begun to assemble some pretty good pieces, especially on the offensive side of the ball.
Among those offensive stars was Vince Permuto, a perennial Pro Bowler and one of the NFL's top linemen for 11 seasons. There were also new faces in the Redskins' backfield. Norm Snead became the first rookie quarterback in league history to start all of his team's games. And the Virginia native displayed flashes of brilliance in his first season. But Snead also showed his lack of experience.
You make mistakes by not throwing the ball when you should and hanging on to it and trying to make things happen, and it made everyone else look bad. And that's the problem with the rookie player. I tried to emulate some players when I was coming along. I watched Unitas and how he threw the ball high, and I watched the Sammy Baws, and I tried to do things that they did.
One thing Snead learned quickly was to get the ball into the hands of number 47, Dickie James, as often as possible.
Norm Snead has found that the aerial game is his best weapon against the Rams. The former Wake Forest star whips a third-quarter pass to Dick James. Dick lights out for the goal line with Bob Smith in hot pursuit. Smith finally catches James, but finds him harder to hold than a steer in a rodeo.
Dick James came to the Redskins in 1956. That was his rookie season. He was just a very shifty, elusive runner, and he was tough to bring the despite the fact that during his time in Washington, the Redskins suffered two of their worst seasons ever, 1960 and 1961. He was very popular among the fans.
James brought crowds to their feet and prevented the Redskins from establishing a dubious record.
Well, by the final regular season game in 1961, the Redskins had gone winless in 23 straight games, and they sorely needed a win. So James came to the rescue. If the Redskins hadn't won that day, it would have been their first winless season in team history.
James scored a club record 4 touchdowns as Washington notched its only victory of the season. But even this brief highlight didn't deny the Redskins the prize choice in the '62 draft.
And Marshall had the first pick in the next year's draft because the Redskins at that point had become so terrible. And he drafted Ernie Davis, the first black Heisman Trophy winner from Syracuse. But he didn't keep Ernie Davis.
Davis said, quote, "I'm not going to play for that SOB." And he was referring to George Preston Marshall, who refused to sign a black player for many years. So the Redskins dealt the draft rights for Davis to the Browns for Bobby Mitchell.
Mitchell found that breaking the Redskins' color barrier would not be easy.
The Redskins would have a welcome home luncheon. That welcome home was for the new players. At the end of this great luncheon, I didn't know traditionally they would sing Dixie. Everybody just singing away, and when Mr. Marshall observed that I was not singing, and he screamed behind me, "Bobby Mitchell, sing!" And so I just started mouthing because I didn't know the song. I'd heard it, but I didn't know it.
With Mitchell's arrival, the strains of Dixie soon gave way to a victory march. But even with on-field success, Mitchell's acceptance was hardly immediate.
And the fans are going nuts because we got off to a great start. We're undefeated, and I've got people spitting on me almost. To be downtown and be denied a seat in a restaurant, to be sitting in a restaurant, a very famous restaurant, and have someone walk by and spit on your foot. When you're the first and people get upset with you, they never forget it. But I adjusted, and after a couple of years of going through some pretty bad social problems in Washington, it turned into a great job, a great city, a great life.
Mitchell was on his way to a Hall of Fame career, a career further enhanced when the Redskins traded for another future Canton enshrinee. The arrival of Sonny Jurgensen heralded the beginning of a record-breaking era.
I looked on coming to the Redskins as a new start, an opportunity to start fresh again with a new organization. And also coming with the Redskins was an opportunity to play for a team that I had grown up just seeing on television, because the Redskins were the only team that you really got to see in the South, being from North Carolina. Here was the team that I was coming to have that opportunity to play with them and to be their quarterback.
I haven't seen anyone who could handle a football in the manner that the redhead could. And I've often said he could hit a gnat at 50 if he wanted to. You pretty well knew that if you ran that pattern correctly, that he was going to find that hole, and that ball was going to get to you before that guy killed you.
What made Sonny's success even more impressive was the fact that the Redskins' rushing attack barely existed.
Over a period of years playing in Washington, when we didn't have the great running game and having to throw the ball off balance, sometimes you're not able to get set and you have to throw that thing moving back a little bit.
Sonny, what's new, buddy?
Help arrived in 1964 with number 42, halfback Charlie Taylor. His running skills gave the team a semblance of offensive balance and earned him NFL Rookie of the Year honors. But it soon became evident that Taylor's talents lay elsewhere.
He was an undisciplined running back. He used to run by his offensive guards. He'd be out in front of them when they were going around the ends. He would pass them up.
On the goal line trap, This linebacker, the weak linebacker, is coming right off in there. He's coming right off, and I can't get inside, you know.
Hit and go out. Hit and go out. Just hit. Go out and get this corner.
All right, all right.
Charlie was eventually moved outside to wide receiver, a position switch that had already benefited the career of teammate Bobby Mitchell.
Luckily, I had Bobby Mitchell, who was a great one to sort of pattern my thing after Bobby. And, you know, Bobby was a smaller guy than me, but I used some of his stuff, and it worked. I knew when I was going to have a great day. I could just look at the defensive back's eyes, and I could tell if I had this guy in my pocket. I could tell that. Now, they did become a little physical during the course of a game, and the only way you could stay in the ball game and survive was you had to either be physical or you had to outrun everybody.
Taylor kept right on running, all the way to enshrinement in Canton, Ohio. That same season, another Hall of Fame player was added to the Redskins roster.
When I came to Washington, it was like starting all over again. The head coach, Bill McPeak, came to New York and said, if you come and play for me, you'll never regret it. And he said, you can wear number 70, which meant a lot to me, my number. We were able to put the defense together here in Washington, build around me, and to try to build it up. Whenever you're a losing organization, it's tough to get that turned around. It takes an awful lot of work.
Huff led by example on the field and was also generous as a mentor to younger players.
Sam Huff taught me more football. He showed me how to live as a professional athlete. And Sam took me under his wing, guided me through those early years of football.
Sam's suggestions paid off, as Krause had arguably the finest season ever by a first-year defensive back.
I was the first rookie in the league's history to make All-Pro. When you get 12 interceptions in 1 year, and especially as a rookie, that's not bad. And I cannot put a finger on why. I just understood what the offense was trying to do to the defense. I understood what the game was all about.
Equally cerebral and twice as nasty was Chris Hamburger, number 55, a menacing presence for 14 years.
Chris Hamburger was a feared tackler because he never tackled below the jawline, hence his nickname, the Hangman or the Hammer.
I had the unfortunate habit that I developed of tackling high. And the only reason I did that is because I felt that if I tackled high, I had to get close to the player, and I had less chance of missing a tackle, of lunging or leaving my feet.
Chris was a small guy to be a linebacker. Incidentally, he was my roommate for about 10 years while we played together. He was a little smaller than a lot of the players, and that's one of the tactics he used, and it was legal, and whatever's legal you can do.
Kennedy goes back, but Chris Hamburger hits him a wallop. The ball is shaken loose. Greg Owens picks it up and goes all the way.
Despite these defensive stalwarts, the Redskins still failed to achieve even one winning season through the mid-1960s. By 1965, George Preston Marshall's influence on the Redskins was waning.
Marshall was suffering some serious health problems, so he turned over control of the team to 3 members of his board of directors, one of whom was the famous D.C. trial attorney Edward Bennett Williams. Williams took full control of the team's day-to-day operations. He became the Redskins president.
I think about the law, sports, and politics as 3 of the most challenging forms of life, and I'm enmeshed in all 3. They're challenging because they're all forms of contest living, that every effort that you make is measured by a score. Did you win or did you lose?
Williams' first major move was the hiring of a new head coach. His choice, the winningest quarterback in pro football history, Otto Graham.
You know, I'm not a very conservative coach. I believe football should be fun for me as the coach, and also fun for the players and fun for the fans. I can promise you we'll play very exciting, aggressive football.
Under Otto, the Redskins boasted the league's best passing attack. Sonny Jurgensen now had a new target, number 87, Jerry Smith, who set an NFL record with 60 career touchdowns, the most ever by a tight end. But Graham never could fix the problems on the other side of the ball. The porous Redskins defense gave up nearly as many points as the offense scored.
Let's go back this half and let's play smart football. I know you're playing with your hearts, but take smart football. Now go out there and think, and let's rack them up. Come on, let's go.
Unfortunately for me, we couldn't stop anybody. We could score 42 points and lose. Coach, I remember playing the Giants one day, and it's 49-41, and I asked Sam Huff, I said, how many points do we have to get to win a football game? He said, keep getting them, keep getting them. Don't let up now.
And the score now goes to the Redskins 72, the Giants 41. Most points ever scored by two teams in one game in the NFL.
What I would say one of the most explosive offenses in NFL history, and that's how the Redskins were able to draw fans. 1966, they started selling out DC Stadium, and to this day, they've sold out every home game.
It was a funny team. They had great marquee players, but they just had a lot of holes. I mean, defensively, they weren't real strong. They didn't run the ball particularly well. They were pretty much just a passing team. Very exciting team, great to watch, but they never got over 500.
The Redskins had now gone 14 straight years without a winning season, and in the summer of 1969, they lost the face of the franchise. Controversial owner George Preston Marshall died at the age of 72. As one NFL icon departed Washington, another arrived, and legendary coach Vince Lombardi.
This is the proudest moment of my life with the Redskins to present to you for this conference, Vince Lombardi.
In spite of what some of you may think, I can't walk across the Potomac even when it's frozen.
When do you expect to have a winner? The first year, the second?
I'd like to have a winner the first year, if possible.
I think he needed that challenge. He thought, hey, I've done it all. I've won 3 world championships in a row. I've brought this team to prominence. Now it's time to turn it over to somebody else. And I think he thought it was time to give it up, but it really wasn't. I knew him from the New York days, and I knew him from competing against him that there was no finer coach in football than Lombardi. I didn't play in 1968, but when he came out of retirement in 1969, I wanted to come back with Lombardi and be a player coach. And I knew that what he could do was change the mental attitude of a football team. He did it when he went to Green Bay. I knew he'd do it in Washington, and I wanted to be a part of it.
Lombardi would also have to win the confidence of the Redskins' talented but mischievous quarterback.
I didn't break curfew with him because he was the only coach that I ever played for that never mentioned my weight. And it was very understandable because the first practice we ever had, he almost killed me with exercises. He knew I would be in shape. He didn't have to mention my weight or anything. He knew that he was going to condition me.
Jurgensen finally got some help on the ground with the arrival of 8th-round draft pick Larry Brown, number 43. Lombardi made certain that Brown's hearing disability would not hold back the eventual NFL Rookie of the Year.
Vince Lombardi had already concluded that I had some sort of hearing impairment, and the day that hearing aid was installed in my helmet, he went to one side of the room and asked me to put the helmet on and go to the other side of the room, and he said, "Larry, can you hear me?" And I said, "Coach, I've never had any problems hearing you."
The entire team appeared to get the message. The '69 Redskins finished at 7-5-2, their first winning record since 1955. Sadly, Coach Lombardi would not get the opportunity to take his team even farther.
I remember him calling upon our trainer many, many times in 1969 because he was having pain and stomach discomfort. And he would call Joe Cuso, who was our trainer with the Redskins, and and say, Joe, get me some of that Digel, get something for my stomach. But I firmly believe that he had possibly the beginning of that cancer in 1969. But Coach Lombardi, as most of us remember, had this thing about pain. In fact, he used to talk to his players. Pain was always in your mind, and he wanted you to play with injuries. And I think part of that philosophy, he believed in it himself. So as a result, he did not have himself checked for this discomfort in 1969. I believe the cancer was growing, and when they opened him up in 1970 in June, it was too late.
The next time I saw him, we played a preseason game in Baltimore, and he was history. I mean, he couldn't talk, could only whisper, and he called the football team together. And I'll never forget what he said. He almost whispered it. He said, I just want you guys to know that you're my team. I selected you to play for the Redskins. You're going to be great. That's all he said.
Vince Lombardi coached the Redskins for only one season, but in that year, he energized the fans, rebuilt careers, and brought winning back to the nation's capital.
The whole time he was in Washington that year, I worked harder. I had more fun. I was in better condition, enjoyed football more than any time in the 18 years. And if I had to pick a highlight out of 18 years of Sonny Jurgensen's career, it would be 1969 under Vince Lombardi.
Tragedy struck the Washington Redskins in 1970, right on the eve of our season opener. Death took Vince Lombardi away from us, and we went through a thoroughly disappointing and very frustrating season. At the end of it, I admit that I was in the depths of despair. We had gone through another losing season, and for a fleeting moment, I thought of giving it up, but I couldn't. I couldn't quit as a loser. I had to turn once again and try to go out and get Washington a winner. There was only one place to go in my mind, and that was west for George Allen.
Man, today starts a new era as far as the Washington Redskins are concerned. And man, I think we're going to have a great season, and are we going to surprise some people?
When Allen first came here in 1971, he basically incorporated the same philosophy with the Redskins as he had used with the Rams, but actually took it one step further. He traded draft picks like they were a deck of cards.
The guy that I would like to have from the Rams, I don't know whether they'd trade him, would be...
It's because he just disliked rookies. He didn't trust them. He traded 7 draft picks and a veteran linebacker named Marlon McKeever to the Rams for 6 players, including the Rams starting linebacker core. And they played under the moniker of the Ramskins.
You know, if we get all the guys, the new guys, there's only about 3 Redskins left. So Brownstall is a big running set.
He invented all the defenses you see today.
The other thing that goes with is screens.
George got the nickel defense, the dime defense. He had the first special teams coach. He had the first strength coach. He was an innovator.
You're covering him. If he comes out, of course, you're covering him either way.
I just saw the atmosphere that he created, and I knew we were going to be a winner.
The old pro. Boy, that's the old pro.
1971. George Allen's first year in Washington was the Redskins' most successful season in 3 decades. This team of senior citizens and cast-offs fed off Allen's infectious enthusiasm and attention to detail and made the playoffs. Along the way, the Ramskins earned a new nickname, the Over-the-Hill Gang.
Let's have 3 cheers for the Redskins. Hip, hip!
Hip, hip, hooray! And, you know, where do you ever hear that anymore? Nobody gives 3 cheers, hip, hip, hooray.
Let's have 3 more. Hooray! 3 cheers for the Redskins. Hip, hip. Hooray! Hip, hip. Hooray! Hip, hip.
And these were all old veterans. And they went along with this, singing hip, hip, hooray, and hooray for George. They were into it too, and I think that was a secret that he had.
Redskin Park was the NFL's finest practice facility. Thanks to their head coach, it was also the most expensive.
This is all part of winning. You know, if you walk into a place and you see everything dumpy and run down, and right away, you see, you think, what the heck, these guys are second division.
George really knows how to spend money, you know. George is a little extravagant, we'd have to say that. It does cost a lot of money to run the Redskins.
Edward Bennett Williams hired him and made a statement at a welcome home luncheon where you had 2,500 people.
At a luncheon one day, just to rib him, I said, you know, when George came here, I told him we had to win at any cost. I gave him an unlimited budget. He's been here 3 weeks and he's exceeded it.
And then George Allen got right up and just stared at him. I was there. I mean, he looked right at Edward Bennett Williams face to face and said, do you want a winner? If you want a winner, that's what you hired me for. Don't be counting the money.
He was paranoid to the point of, we thought, there were times you thought he was almost psychotic. We used to call him Nixon with a whistle.
They were very similar people. I think there was genuine connection between them. They were both very determined, very hardworking, true believers. I think they kind of saw quasi-mirror images of themselves in the other person.
You only have to win 4, but if you win 3 out of 4, you could make the playoffs.
We might,
could.
Yeah, we might.
Because as I looked at those numbers, those other teams have got some tough games.
Yes, right.
But try to win 4.
Yeah, right, we will.
Nixon used to send him plays, and we played San Francisco in a playoff game, and we doing a great job in the first half. And he sent in a reverse. That was Nixon's play. It lost 35 yards, and we wound up losing the game.
President had Etty and I over with Mr. Agnew and the Prime Minister of Australia and Kissinger, and this is the first time I've gone out in all the years during the week. Well, all these politicians are interested in getting on the bandwagon and being seen, and they all want tickets, and the governor of Virginia brought in 8 last week, and the Kennedys are all coming.
In 1972, the nation's capital again witnessed Redskins history. The defense surrendered the fewest points in the NFC, and NFL Player of the Year, Larry Brown, led the conference in rushing. Even when they lost future Hall of Fame quarterback Sonny Jurgensen, the Redskins were able to plug in veteran Billy Kilmer. All number 17 did was lead the Redskins to their first division title in 27 years. The man who directed this amazing turnaround had, by now, become a Redskins icon.
He doesn't swear, smoke, drink, or spit. His favorite beverage is milk. His favorite movie is The Sound of Music. And his middle name is Herbert. George Allen is so square, says a rival coach, that you could roll him on a Las Vegas craps table. Yet George Allen is a man for his time and certainly a man for his place. In 1972, his team won 11 games, more than any Redskin team in history. They finished in first place in the Eastern Division. Allen assembled a group of strangers and taught them the meaning of togetherness.
Just remember this, 40 men together can't lose, okay?
He made them all winners and made football fun again.
Three cheers for the Redskins. Hip, hip. Hip, hip. Hip, hip. Great win. We beat them out their own game. You out-hit them. Now we bring those damn Cowboys next.
In the 1972 NFC Championship game, the Redskins dominated the defending world champion Dallas Cowboys.
Billy facing a five-man front for Dallas as Kilmer drops straight back. Being rushed, throws his pass to Taylor. Touchdown, Washington.
Dallas was held to a field goal and never crossed midfield in the second half.
Die, you dogs, die! Die, you yellow dog, die! One more!
Kilmer's second touchdown pass to Charlie Taylor and 4 Kurt Knight field goals dethroned Dallas. George Allen's Redskins had danced into Super Bowl VII. However, midnight was about to strike for these gridiron Cinderellas. In Super Bowl VII, the Redskins collided with perfection. Don Shula's Miami Dolphins played George Allen's style of football better than the Redskins, intercepting Billy Kilmer 3 times and shutting down the Washington running game. Washington's only points came when the special teams blocked a Dolphins field goal attempt. Garo Yepremian's panic pass was intercepted by number 41 Mike Bass and returned for the Redskins' only score. It proved to be too little, too late. On pro football's biggest stage, George Allen's conservative nature was exposed and exploited. Throughout his coaching career, Allen relied on his defense to keep games close and his special teams for field position and the occasional big play. While this system had merits, too often it came at the expense of the Redskins' offense.
I always thought his philosophy was, we're going to win this game defensively. You know, you offensive guys just don't get my defense in bad field position and we'll win.
George Allen's defense had to win the football game. Everybody knew that.
That's why he could never really win a championship, because he refused to play with all 3 aspects of a football team. He'd play with defense, special teams, and offense, forget about it.
Defense wins the football game, and that's unfortunate for Sonny, because now he can't do his thing.
Sonny Jurgensen's thing was throwing a football, something few have ever done better.
I used to watch him throw the ball behind his back, 30, 40 yards down the field, perfect spirals. They just turn over, guys catch them, you know, and I'd try and do it and hit myself in the rear end, or, you know, the ball would roll along the ground.
In his first 10 NFL seasons, Billy Kilmer was best known for throwing ugly passes. Sonny Jurgensen had the best arm in football. But in Washington, number 9 was a fan favorite with everyone, except his head coach.
All right, let's go.
I guess it started from the first meeting they ever had, and they just hit it off wrong about offensive philosophy.
With George, it was a power struggle here. He was defensive oriented. He wanted to win, 3-0, and he wanted to sit on a 7-0 lead.
In this part, Sonny, we're just setting up a field goal now. See what we're doing. We don't need a field goal to win here. So.
I remember one particular game when Kilmer was starting, and he brought the team down the field, and he got to about the 20-yard line, and he got hurt on second down, and he came off the field, and Allen looked around and reluctantly came to me to put me in, and he said, now you go in, run a draw play, and we'll kick a field goal. So I go in, and I said, the hell with a draw play, I'm going to throw the ball. And I threw a pass for a touchdown, and came back out, and he was upset, like, well, why'd you throw the pass? And I said, well, when I came to the line of scrimmage, they were hollering, look out for the draw, look out for the draw. So I said, audible to the pass, and we scored. Only play I played in the game. He wouldn't put me back in.
Son ain't going to score. I mean, he's not going to sit there and say, well, we got our 21, I'll quit throwing, Not that Billy would do it too, but Billy would mix it up more and take off that clock.
65, they're playing double zone.
I'd rather have the lead draw.
25 lead draw. Go 25 lead draw.
Son ain't going to take that much time. He's going to...
I don't care how good a guy's arm is if he can't read the defense and throw to the right guy.
He's not good at all.
He's not going to win, see?
George wasn't honest with either of us. He'd tell me something, and I'd tell Billy, and it never worked out that he was telling us both the same thing. He would tell us something to try to get results.
Allen's dysfunctional communication resulted in a quarterback dispute that was more fiction than fact.
The controversy as far as the quarterbacks are concerned here, the I like Billy, I like Sonny, George created that.
When you write about who should be quarterback, you're hurting the fans in Washington, you're hurting the football team.
Fortunately for George and for the Redskins, Billy Kilmer and Sonny Jurgensen were friends. If we had not been, we could have split the team right down the middle.
They tried to make like we were bitter rivals and everything, but one thing Sonny and I knew from the start, we had never been on any winning teams before, and we didn't want to break up that combination. We didn't want to be the ones that wanted to divide the team, because we knew whoever was going to be the quarterback, it was going to win.
Billy Kilmer was seldom picture perfect during 8 seasons in Washington. But even if it meant winning ugly, he was, more often than not, a winner. Against the New York Giants in 1976, a deep gash on the bridge of Kilmer's nose seemed to end Redskins' hopes. But trailing 17-12, with less than 2 minutes to play, Billy returned to author another unlikely chapter in his ledger. As a Redskin, Billy Kilmer was never the best-looking quarterback on the field, but he never let that keep him from winning.
This ball goes to Billy Kilmer because he...
While Kilmer won the respect of his head coach, Sonny Jurgensen never did. Unable to play for most of the 1972 championship season, the injured quarterback was banished from the Redskins sideline for Super Bowl VII by George Allen. Then, he vanished from the team picture.
They made 2 pictures of the team that year, of the championship team, NFC championship team. One with me in it and one without me. And they used the one without me, George Allen's decision to use the one without me instead of the one with me. And I did play 4 or 5 games that year and won 4 of the games I quarterbacked.
He was a fanatic football coach. I think he'd do anything to win. He was a fanatic on winning.
Man, boy, is it great to win.
But the guys that played for George Allen, they liked what he did.
Listen, let's not lose this feeling. And hell, we don't care how we win as long as we win. Right. And those guys that got kicked out of the ball game, I'll take care of your fine.
Winning was his ultimate aim. Don't forget, and I mean at all times. Of course he was obsessed with it, but that's what made a good coach. That's what made him.
Every time you lose, you die a little bit. You die inside, a portion of you. Not all of your organs, maybe just your liver. And every time you win, you're reborn.
I would be fascinated to know if he was to ever have taken a Rorschach test, what that doctor, after he examined that, what he would have said. It would have been pretty frightening, I'm afraid.
When I was coaching, if we lost a game, I went home and ate rice pudding and raisins. I wouldn't accept a dinner at the White House. I was ashamed of myself because we lost.
Everything we did from the moment I met him was something about football. I mean, the guy was like locked into this world and he was scared to go beyond it.
My father once went to a White House dinner in honor of Prime Minister Anwar Sadat, and he wanted to meet the Prime Minister to ask him if he had any insight into finding a place kicker in Egypt, to let him know.
Someone who is monomaniacal. You can't reason with them, you can't talk with them, you can't kid around with them. All they're thinking of is, I gotta have this because I need this to win, and don't you understand how important this is?
We didn't bother to give out Christmas cards. We used that money. I found out that they spent close to $3,000 on postage and Christmas cards. We used that money to buy projectors, more projectors to study the Dallas Cowboys.
George Allen's most enduring legacy may be the rivalry he started with the Dallas Cowboys.
In Texas, cowboys are called winners, while they reserve another word for Redskins.
Let's make them eat their words. Be physical. Come on!
George Allen was a genius when it came to creating hype. And the Cowboys became the perfect hype team. This was the team that we could go after.
Roger Staubach and Company. Roger Staubach, Tom Landry, Tex Ram. Here we go.
George Allen taught me to hate the Dallas Cowboys. He taught me to hate the star. He taught me to hate their shiny uniforms. He taught me to hate the up and down of the offensive linemen. The Roger Staubachs, the Danny Whites, the Tony Dorsetts, the we're better than everybody attitude.
In their first meeting since the 1972 NFC Championship, Allen's Redskins were protecting a 7-point lead with only 29 seconds to play. It took a heroic stop on 4th down by future Hall of Fame safety Ken Houston at the 1-yard line to preserve the Redskins' win. Throughout the 70s, Redskins-Cowboys games were must-see television.
Red, 18!
In 1976, the Eastern Division was at stake, and the hitting on the field reflected it. The Redskins had never won in Texas Stadium, but led by remnants of the over-the-hill gang, Washington conquered the Cowboys in their own backyard and won a playoff berth. For 7 years, George Allen changed the culture in Washington by tearing down a stereotype no franchise ever wants.
Allen did transform the franchise into a winner. Allen took the Redskins to the playoffs 5 times in the 70s, but they bowed out of the playoffs in the first round 4 times. He was able to motivate his players so well during the regular season, but it seemed that by the time they got to the playoffs, they were just burned out.
After missing the playoffs in 1977, George Allen's reign in Washington ended.
His one failing was that he made the game not be fun for the owner. Edward Bennett Williams didn't enjoy owning a football team coached by George Allen.
So Williams just fired him, and to play on his words from 1971, he said, "I gave him unlimited patience and he exceeded it."
Contrary to popular belief, even though he had this philosophy of trading away draft picks, it didn't have a lasting, damaging effect on the franchise. You look at the years right after he left, 78, 79, they weren't going drastically downhill. And it was only in 80, the year before Joe Gibbs came in, that the bottom began to fall out just a little bit. So the criticism that he shouldn't have traded away these draft picks or that he hurt the franchise by doing it, I think if you look at the record, it shows that he didn't.
Former Redskins linebacker Jack Pardee, a player George Allen had considered a coach on the field, succeeded Allen.
All right, let's get after it.
Okay, kickoff coverage team, set the pace for the whole game. Let's get out here inside the 20. Defense, hold them, offense, field position to begin with.
Joe Theismann immediately showed promise as Pardee's starting quarterback. But in 1979, Pardee's fate was all but sealed in a division championship showdown with the Cowboys. Twice, Washington built double-digit leads in this winner-take-all grudge match.
Play to Riggins, coming to the right side, and Riggins has a big hole, first down the sideline, 40, 30, he's gone to the 20.
But Washington couldn't put away the Cowboys. And when Roger Staubach completed his last great comeback with but 39 seconds remaining, the Redskins were left out of the playoffs. A year later, the Redskins suffered their first losing season in a decade and entered the 80s as a team in search of new direction.
I would like to give the Redskin fans the type of team that I think that they would be proud of.
In 1981, Joe Gibbs became the 20th head coach in Redskins history. As offensive coordinator in San Diego, Gibbs had helped fly Air Coryell, one of the most powerful passing games in NFL history, a fact that pleased Joe Theismann.
Every team you play for, no matter who the head coach is, that team will take on the personality of the head coach. For the past 7 years here, under Coach Allen and Coach Pardee, they're basically defensive mentors. Now, finally, I've got an offensive coach who, like I say, thinks like I do, and I'm really looking forward to it.
I don't think he wanted to be the power running team at first. He wanted to come in with that Don Coryell air offense and really go after it.
Through the first 5 weeks of that season, we led the league in yards, completions, touchdowns. We're leading everybody. We have the best offense in football. Problem was, we're 0-5.
Man, 0-5 in Washington is a big deal. I mean, I told people I was just looking for a different way home at night.
In Washington, when you go 0-5, the dogs hate you, the cats hate you, your neighbors hate you, so we decided to stay at the office, stay off the streets.
And people were saying, you know, who's this guy? I mean, why would you pick this guy to be the coach of the Redskins?
Gibbs had a number of strengths, and the first one that he showed was his willingness to adjust after the 0-5 start in 1981. Media, fans, you name it, everybody was coming out of the woodwork and saying, listen, you've got John Riggins, use him.
One of Gibbs' earliest moves had been to coax John Riggins away from his ranch, where he sat out the 1980 season.
I pulled up back of that farmhouse that morning. I have a new suit on. I'm going to go sell this player, and I turn around, look, and the very first time I meet him, he's coming across the back of the courtyard with a hunting outfit on. It's 10 o'clock in the morning. He's got a beer can in his right hand. You know, I'm kind of going, oh, great.
First thing I see him, and I go, hey, I'm bored, I'm broke, and I'm back.
Back and better than ever. And he would go on to gain more yards rushing in his 30s than in his 20s. General manager Bobby Beathard also brought in Joe Washington. When Gibbs switched to a one-back, two tight end offense, Riggins carried the load on running downs, while Washington came within 2 receptions of the team receiving record with 70 catches.
You always had that fear when he was back there in that backfield that Joe Washington was going to find a way to get loose. He was a runner that was probably 20 years ahead of his time.
If Washington was 20 years ahead of his time, Riggins was millions of years behind his. His Stone Age style meshed perfectly with Washington's Space Age speed, and together they compiled well over 2,000 yards of total offense.
The Redskins totaled 5,600 yards that year, which was at the time their highest mark in offensive yardage ever. Theismann had a terrific season, and they won 8 of their last 11 games that year. And as Gibbs has said, that turnaround set the tone for the Redskins for the next 2 to 3 seasons.
The 1982 Redskins were not a team of all pros. In 1981, kick returner Mike Nelms had been the only Washington player to make the Pro Bowl.
Nelms will take the ball at the 25, gets away from a man, tries to cut back, he's at the 30, at the 35, to the 40, he's going, he's at the midfield stripe, he's at the 40, he's gone, kiss it goodbye.
Washington did not have a superstar in any one player, but they had a rock-solid performer in every position. As usual, the special teams were just that, and in Mark Mosley, the Redskins had the steadiest kicker in the game.
26-yard attempt. Snap. Hold is good. Kick is up long enough. It's good. Mark Mosley's toe is sent it to overtime, and Mark Mosley's toe has won it in overtime. There goes Swider. Blocked. The kick is blocked.
The special teams provided a touchdown in the Redskins' victory over the Buccaneers. But with their record at 2-0, championship hopes were deflated.
All NFL training facilities will be struck. We are prepared to withhold our services however long it takes.
A player strike would last 57 days. During that time, Washington players held their own practices. And when NFL stadia began to fill again, the Redskins were ready.
First hit of the new season. Kick some ass.
The Redskins celebrated their return with a win over the Giants. And when the teams met again 4 weeks later, Mark Mosley's record 21st straight field goal put Washington in the playoffs.
A 42-yard attempt. Plenty long enough. It's good! Mark Mosley has broken the National Football League record.
The 82 football teams really was Mark Mosley. I mean, this was a football team that was barely good enough to beat people because they had a kicker who was having a sensational year. I think that's the way the people looked at our football team and said, heck, we can keep them out of field goal range. They don't stand a chance.
But I was very fortunate that year to be on a team that really needed what I could do, and which was make field goals. And we had 9 games, we won 8. And I think 7 of those games I won with field goals. In several games, the points that I scored were the only points in the game, but we still won.
Mark Mosley became the first kicker ever named NFL MVP. But when the playoffs began, another man, John Riggins, demanded the spotlight.
And he went in and talked to Coach Bugle and said, I want the ball. He says, I'm ready to bust loose. And Coach Bugles told him to go see the man. I'd love to have heard the conversation, but I guarantee you Coach Gibbs had very little to say. I bet JR was doing all the talking.
He goes, I tell you what happens here. You give me the ball 30 times a game and hitch the wagon.
John Riggins' performance in the playoffs was made more important with the loss of leading receiver Art Monk. But with Riggins gaining 119 yards, Detroit's defense had to concentrate on him, and Monk's replacement, Elvin Garrett, caught 3 touchdown passes.
Back is Theismann. Quick lob into the corner of the end zone. Touchdown! Alvin Garrett with his second today. Here comes the Fun Bunch in the end zone.
The victory over Detroit saw the debut of the Fun Bunch. Alvin Garrett was not only a member of this group, he was also a Smurf.
I watched the Smurfs. They were little purple guys. Here we had these little wide receivers, and what better name for them?
Smurf 1 and Smurf 2 back into the game.
We had these kind of non-typical, pro wide receivers, guys that, nowadays are 6'1", 6'2", 6'3" wide receivers, and we had a bunch of little guys running around that were, 5'9", 5'8".
And then the funny thing about it, they would argue about who's the tallest.
There was no argument over who was the biggest. The Redskins' offensive line, affectionately known as the Hogs, outweighed and outplayed every defensive front they faced.
It was a situation where in every town where there's an NFL franchise, everybody knows who the starting quarterback is. Everybody knows who the starting running back is. In Washington, D.C., they knew every offensive lineman's name, and you can't say that of any other NFL city. You'd walk down the street, people would invite you into restaurants, they'd buy you dinner, they'd buy you drinks, you'd go to a grocery store, people were asking you to sign autographs. It was the greatest thing in the world. We felt like we were the stars at that time.
Washington next faced Minnesota in the second round of the playoffs. The Vikings made the mistake of challenging the Redskins' big boys.
You know that the Hog nickname obviously ticked off a lot of defensive lines we played against. But to make a statement that, we're going to come in and butcher the Hogs, it was like, well, let's find out. We'll show up on Sunday.
Everybody talked about the Hogs, this great offensive line, and the Vikings take it personal. So they start talking about, obviously, if you're going to, cut up a pig or a hog, you butcher them. That's the worst thing they could have done. 40 gut, first play. 50 gut, second play. 50 gut, third play. 40 gut, fourth play. 50 gut, fifth play. John just didn't run through holes. It was that game that he exploded.
Big run, John Riggins. And to Riggins, held up in the backfield, dives forward. Did he get it? Touchdown, John Riggins.
Crowd screaming and yelling and cheering. John, ever the showman, takes his helmet off, bows to the crowd.
This is for John Riggins, who does a bow at the 43-yard line.
And then the place just goes electric with "We Want Dallas." It brings the hair up, it still does. To hear that sound, to see those people all excited for one football game.
The crowd was awesome. Turned out what they wanted is what they got and what we gave them.
It's what most guys think the Super Bowl experience will be like, but the Super Bowl pales in comparison to this.
Riggins had his third straight 100-yard day, but it was a defensive play that is forever burned into Redskins fans' memory.
Play action fake to Dorsett. Hit the ball well. Set up a screen, batted in the air, picked off by Darryl Graham. Touchdown, Washington Redskins!
And the Redskins have won it 31-17, and they go to the Super Bowl.
We're not real talented, we're not real great, but damn, we're the NFC champions, that's all that
matters. Super Bowl 17 can be summed up in just one play. turned in on the game's biggest stage by the game's brightest star.
Let's go. Goal line, goal line. I left tight wing, 70 chip on white. Ready?
Here comes the Diesel. Here comes the Diesel.
Yellow 41! Yellow 41! Hunt!
There's the snap, hand to Riggins. Good hole. He's got the first down to the 40. He's gone. The 35, the 30, the 20. He's gone. He's gone. Touchdown, Washington Redskins. Holy cow, what a play. 42-yard touchdown run on 4th and a foot. John Riggins has given the Redskins the lead in Super Bowl 17.
Look at his face. Just look at the man's face. It tells you the entire story.
That 4-game stretch is the greatest period for a runner in postseason NFL history. All told, in the 4 playoff games, Riggins ran for more than 600 yards, and it was capped by his 166-yard performance in Super Bowl 17, in which he was named MVP.
You don't see players get put into a position where they can determine the outcome of the game, where they can be the star and they grab it and go on to it. And those are the great ones. Those are your Hall of Famers, and that's exactly what Riggins did.
For the first time since 1942, the Washington Redskins have an NFL championship.
I am in a state of ecstasy. Never mind that nonsense about euphoria and so on. It is sheer, unadulterated, uncompromising ecstasy.
You take a lot of pride in winning a championship, but you take a lot of satisfaction from seeing the fans that actually make the game what it is, to see the smiles on their faces, to see how proud they are of their favorite football team.
I don't think today could be a greater testimony to the fact that there's no other fans in the world that would come out on a day like this except in Washington, D.C. And I want you to know that each one of you has a small piece of this trophy today.
The Redskins entered the 1983 season as defending champions. If anything, the team performed even better, smashing team and NFL records while compiling a 14-2 record. The 2 losses coming by a total of just 2 points.
I would go into games not even questioning whether we win. The only question that I had on my mind was how many points we were going to score. We were truly a complete football team.
We had offensive power everywhere. That year, we had a great offensive team. Teams couldn't keep us from scoring.
Charlie Brown set a team record with 78 receptions, and John Riggins set an NFL record with 24 rushing touchdowns, finishing as the 2nd highest scorer in the league. The only player to outscore Riggins was Mark Mosley. Together, Mosley and Riggins outscored 8 other entire teams. Washington lined up a record-setting defense as well. While limiting opponents to 81 rushing yards per game, Redskins defenders claimed 61 turnovers.
The giveaway-takeaway ratio, plus 43. No one will ever break. I will state that, matter-of-factly, right here in front of this camera, and say no one will ever break that record.
Spy! Spy!
The Redskins have always fielded excellent special teams, always solid, sometimes spectacular.
This is going to be the throwback to Darryl.
Darryl Green is back with Giaquino inside their 45, and it is taken at the 47, and a lateral across the field to midfield, down to the 45, 40, 30, 25, 20, 15, 10. A touchdown by Darryl Green.
Offense, defense, and special teams. The Redskins had it all. And when they crushed the arch-rival Cowboys in Dallas, Washington clinched the NFC East Division title for the 2nd year in a row.
Theismann's going to pass. He's going to dash out here. Pumps once. He's got touchdown. At the 5. Touchdown, Washington Redskins. 40-yard touchdown pass, and the Cowboys all looking down there picking at artificial grass. He wasn't my man. No.
Scored a touchdown, and immediately the guys go to the fun bunch.
Downs and Thurman tried to break up our celebration. We continued to jump. I guess we just jumped over them.
So they spent all week planning how to stop the jump. All you had to do was stop us from scoring.
Easier said than done, as the Rams would discover in the 1983 divisional playoffs.
Fires it near side. Monk. Bye-bye. Touchdown, Washington Redskins. Ferragamo fires it out on the far side to Dickerson. Picked off. He's gone. It's 28, Darrell Green. Bye-bye. Racing to the end zone. Everybody else was running full speed and Darrell was just trotting. Vince Ferragamo was giving chase. That was really funny. Not if you're Ferragamo. That's not so funny.
Anytime you come out and you score 51 points, you get that feeling that maybe, you know, hey, we could do this on anybody.
Look out, killer. Here comes the diesel.
In the conference championship game, the Redskins scored 21 points in the first half alone.
Even though we jumped up on them 21-0, we were still clenching our fist on the sideline, knowing that their quarterback can bring them back.
They had a guy on that football team, gosh, his name was Montana. Yeah, that guy there. He was pretty good.
And he led the 49ers back to a 21-21 tie.
Field goal, huh? Field goal!
Mark Mosley, who had missed 4 field goals in the game, had a return trip to the Super Bowl squarely on his square-toed kicking shoe.
If he misses it, he'll need a National Guard to get him out of the stadium alive.
And I said, if you miss this one, I'll kill you. He said, I'm not going to miss this one, Buggs.
When it came down to it, he was going to stick it through the uprights. And nobody at all thought he was going to miss it.
I had no doubt in my mind he was going to make this one. He was always calm, too. He'd come out and say, okay, put it down. I'll make it.
And he'll try to win it as he has done so many times for the Redskins and apparently put them into the Super Bowl. But he has to make it. Theismann is the holder. They get it down. It's good.
Is there anything better? If there's anything better than this, I hope it happens in 2 weeks.
If John Reagan's run in Super Bowl 17 is the most famous play in Redskins history, then the most infamous occurred in Super Bowl 18.
Here come the Redskins with 12 seconds to go in the half. Trailing 14-3.
I drop back, I read the safeties, they're going to zone, I turn around, the ball just starts to leave my hand and I see Jack Squirick start to break for it. I'm going, oh God. I'm thinking, I remember the movie Black Sunday, where somebody shoots the ball before, it falls down to the ground. I'm praying somebody's up there with a high-powered rifle going to shoot the ball. Squirick makes the catch, goes in the end zone.
Intercepted! Jack Squirick! Touchdown Raiders! I don't believe it!
The Redskins never recovered, and this record-setting team lost the Super Bowl and its chance to go down in history as one of the greatest teams of all time.
If we had won that particular football game, that Super Bowl, I believe that the '83 Redskin football team is the greatest football team in the history of professional football.
I thought that team, as far as talent and everything, was probably, the best team that I was proud to be a part of.
Joe Gibbs was an offensive genius, but throughout his first tenure, the Redskins defense under coordinator Richie Pettibone was just as clever.
I always, with Rich and those guys, I'd always walk down there and the only thing I'd ever say is, please stop them. That's the only thing I could help them with.
Peopled by soon-to-be superstars like Darrell Green and crafty veterans like Mark Murphy, in 1984, Washington set a team record with 66 sacks for an astonishing 529 yards in losses. Crashing ends Charles Mann, number 71, and Dexter Manley, number 72, pillaged enemy pass pockets. Defensive tackle Dave Butts, number 65, stuffed the run, with help from linebackers like Neil Okowitz, number 52. In their first ever season sweep of the Cowboys, Washington's defense scored touchdowns in both victories.
Second down and long. Hogan moves the pass out on the left side. Picked off. It's gone. Monty Coleman. He's gone for a touchdown. Coleman to the 10. The 5. Touchdown. Washington Redskins.
Danny White is in the shotgun formation.
Redskins coming with a blitz after him. Throws it near side. Picked off. Darrell Green's got it. The 25, 20. Bye-bye. Defense. Touchdown. Washington Redskins.
The 2 wins over Dallas set up a Redskins-Cardinals game for the division title on the final Sunday of the '84 season. The game was also a coronation for record-setting wide receiver Art Monk.
3rd down and 5. A long time. Back is Theismann. Straight drop. Steps up. Fires it down the far side. He's got it complete to Monk. There's the record at the 30. He's down to the 20. Inside the 20 and out of bounds at the 17. Art Monk has just broken the National Football League record for receptions in a single season. The crowd is on its feet.
They should be. What a great record to break, and a well-deserved honor for Art Monk.
In a familiar scenario, kicker Mark Mosley was called on to clinch a title with a minute and a half left in the game.
The Redskins win the NFC Eastern Division title.
1 week later, however, Joe Gibbs suffered the only home playoff game defeat of his career, losing to the Bears, and the '84 season was over. At the start of 1985, 25 players from the Super Bowl XVII team were gone. By the end of the year, 2 of the Redskins' most popular players ever would be leaving too.
He had so much respect that Mr. Cook, the owner at that time, and Joe Gibbs actually kept John an extra year just to thank him. The whole organization felt a debt of gratitude, so we kept him on scholarship, as we said, for 1 more year, just to say thank you and bow out gracefully. That's how much the people loved that guy. You run a lot of phonies in this league that talk a lot but go out there on Sunday and you know, don't perform. John said very little. His performance did all the talking for him.
Joe Theismann was quite a different story. He rarely let anything or anyone do any of his talking.
I figured you had.
I coming back. I know. When I came back, I had to move real quick, and I lost the guy.
Theismann's performance led to team records for completions and yardage. His mouth led him straight to the broadcast booth when a devastating injury ended his playing career.
I remember everything that happened that night. I remember Joe Gibbs coming up and looking at me. He goes, Joe, you've meant so much to this football team. This is a heck of a mess you've left me in. And we both started to laugh. It was just a light moment in a very tense situation. People come up to me all the time and say, hey, Joe, did it hurt? And I look at him, I say, you know, I can best explain it this way. You sit here and hang your foot over the curb. I'll be right back with my car, and I'll run over your leg and you tell me if it hurts. That's, in essence, what happened.
Riggo and Theismann as in Heisman. In 1990, they were inducted into the Redskins Ring of Fame together. For Riggins, who attended the ceremony in full uniform, it was one last chance to be a Redskin.
I have a showman flair to me, and I knew that that would be a great moment, that I would really enjoy it, that the crowd would just go crazy, and that's what I wanted to hear.
When Theismann was injured, backup Jay Schrader finished out the year and led Washington to 5 wins in the final 6 weeks of the season, earning the starting job in 1986. That year, he compiled the first 4,000-yard passing season in team history.
Somebody looks like they're going to come open deep. If I have a 50-50 shot, I'm going to throw it deep. I have a lot of faith in my receivers. When I throw the football and there are one-on-one coverage, I'm believing that my receiver's going to win.
Schrader to pass. Flops it up in the air. He's got Clark at the goal line. Caught it. What's the call? Touchdown, Washington Redskins.
Along the way, there were several other team records established. Dexter Manley racked up 18 sacks, and Steve Cox kicked the longest field goal in Redskins history, 57 yards.
Good kick is up. Plenty of leg. Will it make it? It's good.
In a critical game against the Cowboys, the Redskins scored 34 points in 30 minutes, the most points ever given up by Dallas in one half.
The 15, the 10. He's going all the way. Touchdown, Washington Redskins.
In the playoffs, the Redskins shut down Eric Dickerson and claimed a playoff record 6 turnovers to advance to the next round. Against the Bears, the defense held the great Walter Payton to just 38 yards. but trailed late in the game.
3rd and 7. Schrader rolls out to his right. Sets up, fires it deep. He's got Monk all alone. End zone, touchdown, Washington Redskins.
A headline in a Chicago paper had boldly stated, "Bears ready if Redskins show up."
It'd give us a little incentive. I mean, if we show up, we was going to show up. We didn't know. You never predict how you're going to play, but I mean, geez, don't ever say, the Redskins aren't even going to show up.
We came out on top. I think that just shows you the spirit and the enthusiasm on this team and the players that are involved. I think that we got a great team here, and I think we've proven that today.
The conference championship game was played in offense-numbing cold and 25-mile-an-hour winds.
You often say that no team can beat the same team 3 times. Well, the Giants beat us 3 times that year. 2 of them were up in the Meadowlands, and they had a great football team. But I think losing to the Giants really propelled us to do well in 1987.
After splitting the first 2 games of the 1987 season, Joe Gibbs found his players on a picket line instead of a scrimmage line. The second player strike in 5 years was handled differently this time. After 1 week with no games, replacement football kicked off.
It was almost like forming a new league, but you had to do it in 10 days. Joe Gibbs was fantastic. From the very first day that we brought the players in, he approached it just as if it were the regular squad and the regular season game, probably even more intensely because he knew he had to get them ready.
After 4 weeks, the strike came to an end. With the knowledge that this would be their last game as Redskins, the replacement players defeated a Cowboys team that included several regulars who had crossed the picket line.
They knew that was going to be the last game. I got to tell you the truth, that's as good an effort. They played their hearts out.
High formation, motion, handoff, end around. Phillips to the near side, 10, 5, to the 4, touchdown!
I will say this, that game was about as emotional as you could be in a game.
For a Redskins team of all scabs to defeat a Cowboys team with some of their starters, including 2 Hall of Famers in Dorsett and Randy White, I mean, that is a tremendous feat.
One thing about the Redskin organization, they knew ahead of time there was going to be a possibility of a strong strike, so they went out and rounded up some real good football players. If it wasn't for that bunch, we may have not got to the Super Bowl.
Gibbs' next problem was deciding on a quarterback. Jay Schrader was coming off a great season in 1986. But when Gibbs brought in Doug Williams to back him up, the Redskins wound up with another quarterback controversy.
I guess each season brings its own set of problems and difficulties, and it's just a matter of you handling it better than everybody else does. I think our biggest thing about our football team is our quarterback situation and the fact that we have 2 excellent quarterbacks. That's a coach's dream. If we had that every spot, I wouldn't have to worry.
When the strike was over, when the regular roster players came back, Schrader retained his starting role. Then later he was yanked by Gibbs because of his poor play. Williams came back on, then Williams injured his back, and Schrader came back, and it just went back and forth until the final game of the season. The end of the controversy was when Williams came in the 3rd quarter against the Vikings, and he never relinquished the job because he played well enough to keep it.
By throwing 2 touchdown passes and leading an overtime game-winning field goal drive, Williams cemented his starter status for the postseason.
There you go, Douglas.
For Washington, Joe Gibbs has turned it over to Doug Williams today. Now, a man who is familiar with past quarterback controversies in Washington, Sonny Jurgensen. He's with Jimmy the Greek. Let's go to the Greek.
Williams is 0-2 starting and 3-0 coming in. There's a little different pressure on you when you're a starter. There's a lot of responsibility as far as leading the team. Coming off the bench is no pressure. You're only getting in the game because the guy that was playing poorly.
I never really played in anything below 0 type of weather, so it was going to be my first time. I know during pregame warm-up, I felt like I didn't have any hands. I couldn't even feel the football, and I'm in the dressing room saying, man, how am I going to play this game? First game I ever played with gloves on, and I didn't know what to expect.
Back is Doug Williams, sets up, blitz, throws it in a hurry. Didier at the 4, touchdown! Touchdown, Washington Redskins.
Having come back from a 14-point deficit, Joe Gibbs decided it was time for his secret weapon.
And you knew it was a big moment in a game when Joe Gibbs put Darrell Green back as a returner. Darrell Green was not used very often during his 20-year career as a kick returner.
The rest of the 10 guys were energized. It's something new, it's fresh. Darrell's in the game, and in that one particular case, these guys did an incredible job.
Green driven back to midfield on the far side. He's got the ball up to the 45, far side 40, a seam to the 35, vaults a man to the 30, breaks it to the near side 25, watch out to the 20, near side 10, he's gone, touchdown, Washington Redskins. Darrell Green returns the punt 50 yards.
Attitude was that we was going to never say die. Basically, that's going to be our attitude going into the next week. No matter how bad things get, we just got to come out and keep on trying until the end, you know. It's not over till the fat lady sings.
San Diego, here we come. Redskins got them on the run. Led by Williams, goal winner. San Diego, here we come.
Special teams had won the game against Chicago, and after 2 Williams touchdown passes had given the Redskins the lead over the Vikings in the conference championship game, it was up to the defense to preserve the victory.
One down to the Super Bowl.
Joe Gibbs down on one knee where he can see. Yeah. Down on both knees so he can see.
So he can say a prayer.
I'll never forget Coach Gibbs on his knees praying. He didn't even look at the play.
It's 4th down and 4. Wilson takes the snap, looking left, throws it into the end zone, batted away, incomplete. Redskins are going to the Super Bowl. Woo-hoo! The Washington Redskins are the National Football Conference champions. They are going to San Diego.
Score 1 postseason win for the special teams, 1 for the defense, and in Super Bowl 22, most definitely 1 for the offense.
The Washington Redskins offense is back on the football field, and so is number 17, Doug Williams. Play action fake. Williams going up top. Got Sanders on the fly at midfield. He's gone unless they can catch him. Touchdown, Washington Redskins.
We're coming back. We're going to do it.
Williams to pass, lobs it up. He's got Clark at the goal line. He's got it. Touchdown, Washington Redskins. He'll hand off to Smith, and he's back. Good hole. Midfield. Horse race to the 40. Far side 35, 30, 25, 20, 15, 10, 5. Touchdown, Washington Redskins. Action fake this time. Faked out everybody. He's got Sanders in the clear at the 10. Touchdown, Washington Redskins.
You're watching history. This is history in the making.
Get another one right here.
In under 6 minutes, on just 18 plays, the Redskins racked up 5 touchdowns and set a host of records in the most explosive performance ever in a Super Bowl.
The second quarter was more fun. It was like calling a fireworks display.
Doug Williams' performance in Super Bowl 22 is what dreams are made of.
Most valuable player of Super Bowl 22 is quarterback Doug Williams of the Washington Redskins.
After the Super Bowl, we had an opportunity to go to the White House and present President Ronald Reagan with a football and a jersey, and I had a chance to get to the podium.
I have a token of appreciation also. I'm going to give it to the president up under one circumstance, that he run the right play. And the play is trips right, fake zoom, Larry crisscross. And he got to throw it.
He got to the mic and he said, "Where's Ricky Sanders?"
Where's Ricky Sanders?
And all of a sudden, Ricky Sanders ran across and he threw a perfect pass, and the crowd went wild.
For the second time in 5 seasons, the Washington Redskins were NFL champions. But the team that Joe Gibbs and Bobby Beathard had built together would fall apart just 1 year later. 1988 was the only losing season suffered by Joe Gibbs during his first tenure as head coach. Part of the reason was an ongoing quarterback situation. Jay Schrader had asked to be traded and was. Doug Williams was injured for most of the season. And an unknown quantity named Mark Rippon, a 6th-round draft choice, was pressed into service.
There's a lot of expectations from the quarterback here, so I think from my standpoint there is a lot of pressure, but I always had a coach in high school who used to tell me that pressure is a chance to prove yourself, and given a pressure situation, that's what I look forward to, an opportunity and a chance to go out and show what I made on it.
Rippon was obviously made of the right stuff. By the end of the year, he and Williams had combined for 33 touchdown passes and over 4,300 yards, both Redskin records. Wide receiver Ricky Sanders tied the team record with 12 touchdown receptions. Pretty spirals are nice, but no Redskin runner gained over 500 yards. So for the 1989 season, Beathard brought in 2 former 1,000-yard rushers. Ernest Biner scored 7 times, and Gerald Riggs set the team's single-game rushing record with 221 yards against the Eagles.
40, 35, breaks it, 30, 25, near side 20, the 10, the 5, touchdown, Washington Redskins.
In 1989, the Redskins piled up over 6,200 yards, over half of that provided by the posse.
Gibbs had this scheme called the bunch formation. He'd line them up, all 3 of them, and just let them run really complicated routes.
Gary Clark, Ricky Sanders, and Art Monk each had over 1,000 yards receiving and combined for 245 catches and 21 touchdowns. Now established as the starter, in 1990, Mark Rippon would miss 6 games due to injury. So Gibbs turned to his running game and Ernest Biner.
Really, Ernest is pretty much not the kind of guy that comes up and talks to you a lot or says things. He came over and sat down next to him. He said, hey, I just want to let you know that, hey, I want to carry the full load. I feel good about myself. He says, hey, I feel real good about where I am, and give it to me. And basically, I looked around and I says, hey, in case you haven't looked, there's nobody else to give it to. We got a 1-back offense here, and you're the back. So we gave it to him.
And he took advantage of the Hogs' favorite offensive play. The counter tray running play was to the Redskins what the power sweep once was to the Green Bay Packers.
It's probably the #1 running play we have in our offense. It used to be 40 and 50 gut, but the counter tray has replaced that. And probably the biggest thing that makes it work is our left side, Jacoby and Grimm. They're the main people, and they do the pulling, and they do a great job. So really, right now, we'll call it in any situation. If we're going to our right side, we have Don Warren and Mark May actually double teaming the defensive end. We have our right guard on the nose guard. Then we have Grimm who pulls out. He will trap the outside linebacker, and Jacoby will pull, and he'll turn up looking for any leakage that may come from inside out. When you get Russ Grimm and Joe Jacoby rolling with about 4 or 5 steps, then they can cause a lot of real good collision.
Collisions had already cost the Redskins the services of Mark Rippon. And in the body bag game, Joe Gibbs lost backup Stan Humphries and Jeff Rutledge as well.
A coach always has a dreaded fear. And the dreaded fear for me was that game. They beat our eyes out that game. I mean, literally, that's the nightmare for me in coaching.
Joe Gibbs walked up to me and said, well, go in and do what we taught you. And I'm like, well, you didn't really teach me anything. Only touchdown drive we had the whole day. I was like, I think 3 for 4 passing. I ran 3 times for maybe about 16 yards, and I scored a touchdown.
Nothing against Stan or Jeff, but Brian had the best game of all 3 of the guys, you know, and I think he let us down to a touchdown. I can't recall offhand, but I think he took us down. We scored, but a little too much, too little, too late scenario, and we definitely did have to have a gut check there at that point in time about what type of football team we were and where we were going.
It was embarrassing as a player to hear, you know, this body bag game. So we just filed it away and said, hey, we'll get another shot at these guys. And if anybody comes out of the NFC East, it's not going to be those doggone Eagles.
In the 1990 playoffs, the Redskins took their revenge.
I think every one of us kind of felt that was something more than just a playoff game. You know, we responded very well and very professionally and went out there and did our job.
Hey, let's win. Hey, let's win with style, man. Win with style. Great job. Hey, proud of all of you. Proud of all of you, man. Yes, baby.
Although they were eliminated from the postseason the next week versus the 49ers, the Redskins had determined what kind of team they were and where they were going in 1991. Entering 1991, there was no quarterback controversy, but there were questions.
Let's face it, he's going to be judged here with the Redskins if he can win a Super Bowl, because that's what other quarterbacks here have done. And so he's going to be judged on that.
The verdict was in when Rippon led the Redskins to the largest victory margin in their history.
Rippon got a man wide open. On it, touchdown, Washington Redskins. How would you gauge Mark Rippon's performance tonight?
Oh, I think he's been outstanding. Preparation was very good, and he's been very sharp.
Back he goes, avoids the pass rush, going deep on the fly to Clark. Caught, touchdown, Washington Redskins. A beautifully thrown ball. Speak of the devil, Mark Rippon.
Rippon also gave owner Jack Kent Cook the testimony he was hoping to hear.
Mr. Cook came to practice, and I went over and said hi to him, and he said, "Mark, what kind of a year are we going to have?" He said, "Well, we're going to try to take it all the way this year." "Well, God bless you then, Mark. Go out and do it."
And did he ever? Rippon led the Redskins to 11 straight wins, and against the Falcons, tied the team record of 6 touchdown passes. When Joe Gibbs gave Rippon the opportunity to break the record, Rippon proved that he had become the team leader.
He came over to me and said, "Hey, you want to go for the record?" And I says, "You know, I'm really not a record guy. I'm not into those things." I said, "Besides, Coach, we might play these guys again."
Mark, at that point, for all of us, the team and everybody else, I think we believed. And, you know, he kind of earned his way into our heart, and I think he'd proven that he was a quarterback that could take you all the way. People could easily miss what made Mark a heck of a quarterback. What he never missed was the deep ball. Man, I'm going to tell you, that deep thing there, he could hit it.
But Rippon wasn't doing it alone. This Redskins team was loaded. The posse threw in 186 catches for nearly 3,000 yards and 23 touchdowns. The latest version of the Hogs allowed only 9 sacks. Ernest Biner rushed for over 1,000 yards, and Gerald Riggs scored 11 touchdowns.
A brilliant run by Ernest Biner. Great run.
The defense allowed only 5 teams to score 20 or more points, and the Redskins won 8 of their games by 245 points.
I think if you went back and you looked at the stats, you would see that our defense was in the top 10 of defenses every year for years.
Brian Mitchell's first kick return touchdown kept the special teams as hot as ever.
Mitchell takes it to the 32. He's out to the 40. He's through a seam to the 45, to the 50, near sideline 40. Horse race 30. He's gone. Touchdown, Washington Redskins.
Gibbs had plenty of reason to smile. All his weapons were locked and loaded and ready for another postseason assault. Rippon had been right. The Redskins did meet the Falcons again. In the first round of the playoffs, Washington shut down Atlanta's offense. The Redskins' offense successfully slogged through the difficult playing conditions, and Washington fans had a pillow party.
One guy threw one of those things, and everybody went, "Hey, whoa!" The yellow seat cushions were flying. I think it was a great memory for us, and it was a great day, and I think the weather kind of fit us. Everything did. It kind of all went our way.
This is where Detroit ain't going. The Super Bowl.
Ain't no tomorrow. This is it. This is bigger than the Super Bowl. Because if you lose today, you don't go.
The conference championship was decided on the very first play of the game.
Back he goes, looking right, gets hit, knocked up in the air, ball is loose on the turf at the 10, scrambled, picked up, Redskins ball, first and goal.
First down for the Redskins on like the 8-yard line, and we go in to score, and you know, the rest was history.
Andre Ware is back, throws on the left side, picked off at the 33-yard line. Here comes the return by Darrell Green. He's back to the 10, cuts to the 5, touchdown, Washington Redskins. Rippon goes back to pass, deep drop. Lobs it in the end zone for Monk. Jumping, catching, touchdown, Washington Redskins. The Redskins headed to Minnesota in Super Bowl 26, the NFC champs.
Yes! Feels real good. Hey, man. I've been crying all day. I can't cry now, though. I'm crying out. It's nice, though, man. It's nice.
Hey! Mr. Cook, how you doing? Darling. Hey, how you doing? Good to see you. I thought that was your wife next to you. How you doing?
Oh, geez, thank God I was scared all the way through. Until you finally got those extra ones that I sat down.
I was scared all the way.
All the way.
Despite 14 wins in the regular season and 2 decisive victories in the playoffs, the Redskins were underdogs to the more glamorous Buffalo Bills.
We weren't even expected to win. I mean, we're going against the Buffalo Bills. That was our stance. You know, we didn't have any superstars. You know, they had them all. And then it was the Washington Redskins, Joe Gibbs and the Washington Redskins.
Super Bowl 26 saw a typical total team performance. The defense held Thurman Thomas to 13 yards rushing and buried Jim Kelly. The Hogs blocked. Gerald Riggs ran for 2 scores. Ernest Biner scored once, and Mark Rippon threw 2 touchdown passes.
Biner at the 5, dives to the corner, touchdown, Washington Redskins. Whoa! Yeah! Yeah! Back he goes. Good protection again, going deep. He's got Clark in the end zone. Touchdown, Washington Redskins.
For the 3rd time in 10 years, the Washington Redskins were champions of the football world.
It's not as much having got it, it's the struggle of getting there. All the obstacles you've had to overcome to get something that hard. So now here you are, picture this, you go through this whole year, you win a Super Bowl, you just let out a big sigh of relief, get in the car, okay? And just before the limo pulls off, this fan grabs the door and jerks the door open this limo. He knew we were in there and he goes, "Hey, we got to get them next year, you hear me?" He gives like, I thought to myself, give me 30 minutes, will you? I thought to myself, here we go again. I think that's probably part of a football coach's life.
In 1992, the Redskins finished in 3rd place in the division. They needed help to get into the playoffs and were eliminated in the 2nd round. But the year was not without honor. On a Monday night, Art Monk became the NFL's all-time leader in pass receptions.
Art Monk needs 1. Rippon is back, looking for Monk on the out pattern. He's got it at the 27, out of bounds at the 23. Art Monk is now number 1, the most prolific pass receiver in the National Football League's history.
He was an absolute clutch player. Art Monk dropping a pass was like something you document. It was like, this is unbelievable. You know, people didn't really appreciate it. He avoided the press. He didn't want to talk. But he was a leader in that locker room, and that's what made him special.
In 2008, the special player was finally accorded his rightful place in the Hall of Fame.
Congratulations, Art.
Joe Gibbs was elected to the Hall in 1996 after retiring in 1992. His first tenure in Washington lasted 12 seasons and included 140 wins and 3 Super Bowl victories.
I think Gibbs' ability to win 3 Super Bowls with 3 different quarterbacks really speaks to his ability to play to the strengths of his players. In terms of the significance of that accomplishment, I don't think that will ever be repeated in NFL history. And you could arguably say that because of that, Gibbs is the greatest coach in NFL history.
A year after the retirement of Joe Gibbs, another enduring Washington monument played his finest game in a Redskins uniform.
My most memorable game was 1993, Richie Pettibone's year as head coach, and we were playing the Atlanta Falcons in RFK Stadium. I think he had 3 sacks, forced fumble recovery, interception, and a touchdown. It was a big day for Monty Coleman that day.
The fumble picked up by Monty Coleman. It's touchdown, Washington Redskins. The defense scores for the icing on the cake, and the whole bench is headed to the end zone to get Monty Coleman.
Coleman retired in 1994, having appeared in more games than any player in franchise history. That same year, the man who'd guided the Dallas Cowboys offense to a pair of Super Bowl titles was hired as the Redskins' new coach.
The great tradition of this football team was a big part of the reason I wanted to be here. And the things that players who are still here have accomplished, players that were here in the past have accomplished. And I think it sets a nice tone for young players, knowing that they're capable of doing the same things.
The feeling at that point was a new coach come in, Norv Turner, and we're going to rebuild the program. The salary cap had come in, and we were the team that was most hurt in the league by the salary cap. So we were going to have to gut our team and start over. And the feeling was if we're going to start over, we're going to start over with a young quarterback. When Heath Schuler came out of college, he was the unanimous first pick of the quarterbacks that year.
Hey, is Heath Schuler a hunk or what?
Schuler looked great until the ball was snapped.
1st and 10 for Heath Schuler. Back to pass. Gonna go deep. Going into the end zone. He's gonna be picked off. How do you explain that?
While Schuler floundered, a late pick in the same draft flourished for the Redskins.
Gus Frerotte, we were trying to find a young quarterback. We found a guy in the 7th round ahead of the guy in the 1st round. That's really what happened at the end of the day. We actually had a very good grade on Gus Frerotte. We had a 3rd, 4th round grade on this guy. And turns out the guy comes through and plays pretty well for a number of years there.
That's that guy called Gus. You gotta love him. Gus for real. Is he cool? Mr. Cool in that pocket.
In 1995, Frerotte helped the Redskins sweep the season series from the eventual world champion Cowboys. But Gus will likely be better remembered for incurring one of the most bizarre injuries in Redskins history.
Play action fake. Frerotte rolling to his right. Chased. Goes for the end zone. Touchdown. Washington Redskins.
In all the commotion, Gus forgot that even the padded walls of RFK Stadium can be unforgiving.
Bang! Hits his head right into the cushion. I mean, there's the Lambeau leap, and there's the Redskin ramp.
Scored and was very excited about it. And, you know, just figuring one of those things, you're just going to bounce right off the wall and come back and celebrate. And it didn't happen that way and got a little shocked, a little stunned.
Fortunately, the Redskins' most lethal collisions were administered by number 57, Ken Harvey, a 4-time Pro Bowl linebacker and Washington's best open field tackler. The best open field runner was number 30, all-purpose back Brian Mitchell, arguably the greatest kick returner in NFL history.
Ball will bounce to the 50. He grabs it to the 41. He's immediately back to the 50, 45 to 40. Cuts it to the near side, 35. All he needs is a block. He's coming to the near side, 25. Got the block. He's at the 10, the 5. Touchdown, Washington Redskins.
You know, I haven't missed a day of practice since I've been in the NFL. In only one game I didn't play, I dressed out for it. So, and it's opportunities where I can probably say, well, you know, man, I'm real tired today. And they'll probably let me not do it, but I have to go out there. And if I'm not getting plays, I get real upset because I hate just sitting around.
He's down to the 20, going all the way. Touchdown, Washington Redskins. And once again, bravo, Brian Mitchell.
No Redskin reached the end zone as often as touchdown Terry Allen.
Let's get this going. Huh? Let's get this going, baby. Let's get this going off the bat. We ain't got time to wait on nobody. Huh? We ain't got time to wait on nobody.
Allen gets the call, going right, got a hole, 45-40, busts it back to the 30, he's gone. Terry Allen to the 10, the 5, touchdown. Well, if nobody else can do it, Terry Allen can.
During the late 90s, few backs in football were more productive than Allen, who saved his best performance for the final game in RFK Stadium.
Hands the ball to Allen, looking for the touchdown, runs, dives, touchdown, Washington Redskins. Allen cracks over again, that's the third one today. Number 21 for number 21. Jumped right into the stand. That's nice, celebrating with the fans.
It would be the last great moment of the Jack Kent Cooke era. The team's longtime owner passed away 4 months later. Cooke did not live long enough to witness the first game played at the new stadium named in his memory.
How's the Cooke built, man? Oh, yeah. Beautiful, isn't it?
Nearly as beautiful as the Redskins' overtime victory.
Farad dodges the man and goes deep. Got Westbrook at the 5, leaping catch, touchdown, Washington Redskins. Oh, a miracle catch, unbelievable. Would Jack Kent Cooke have loved that? Wow! I thought I saw a hand come down and lift it into Michael's. And what a way to start a new era.
Unfortunately, that era was marked mostly by disappointment and defeat. After the 1998 season, the team was purchased by a prominent Washingtonian, an avid fan since childhood.
All my life, I've been with the ups and downs of the Washington Redskins. Dreamed of buying the team someday, and the opportunity came about. And next thing you know, I'm the owner of the team, and it's thrilling. It's exciting. We've got some high expectations, obviously. Why not be passionate up front and let everybody know we have one goal? It's to win the Super Bowl. I think it'll be that way every year here at the Redskins.
He's fun to work for because he gives you everything you want. You know, and he said, I want to win. You know, what does it take for us to win? I mean, how could he ask for anything more?
What Snyder asked of his new team was immediate success.
1999, which was Dan Snyder's first season of owning the Redskins. Prior to that year, it was well publicized that Snyder said if the Redskins didn't make the playoffs, Turner was gone.
Snyder helped his coach by trading for veteran quarterback Brad Johnson. All Johnson did was set a team record for completions and pass for more than 4,000 yards.
Sets going deep into traffic. Tunnel, pulls it away, touchdown!
All day on, man. It's going to scare them to death, man. Scare them to death.
We feel like we have the best people here, and we feel like we have a great opportunity to accomplish something, and it's all there in front of us.
Start the game like champions. We play like champions. 1, 2, 3, begin!
With the season on the line, Johnson broke Sammy Baugh's 50-year-old record for yards passing in a game, en route to the team's biggest win in nearly a decade.
Johnson, play action fake again, throws the out, near side 30, nobody there. Centers 10, 5, touchdown, Washington Redskins. Redskins win and clinch the NFC East.
For the first time in 6 years, the Redskins make the playoffs.
What it's all about, baby. Hey, NFC East champs.
Woo! We won the division. Yeah. All right? But this ball belongs to only one person. This ball, the game ball, belongs to Norv Turner, our head coach.
Turner was able to produce a playoff team that year. The Redskins finished 10-6 and beat Detroit in the first round of the playoffs and nearly beat Tampa Bay in the second round. If not for a botched field goal attempt, the Redskins would have beaten Tampa Bay and gone to the NFC Championship game that year.
That same season, a new star emerged on defense. Champ Bailey overcame rookie jitters to become the NFL's premier shutdown cornerback.
I tried to stay calm. I mean, I was a little nervous, you know, around all these big-time names. You just try to keep your cool and just say it's just football. Go out, do my thing, And that's exactly what I did. I tried to just do my thing and be the best I could be.
From then on, Bailey never missed a Pro Bowl as a Washington Redskin.
Looking, waiting in the pocket, throws it near side, picked off at the 40. Bye-bye. It's Champ Bailey going all the way for a touchdown.
On offense, no one produced better than Stephen Davis.
Instant Davis up the middle, good hole, brings it right side, 40, 35, 30. It's a horse race. He's gone. Touchdown, Washington Redskins. 50 yards. Stephen Davis. Hello, running game. That's what you have to do. You got the big back, use it.
You look at Walter Payne, Eric Dickerson, some of those guys, Tony Dorsett, Franco Harris, some of those guys, they set the standard high. And I feel that it's time for the young guys like myself, got to keep the standard high enough so when guys come in the league, they got to set a goal and they got to go for it.
I've played with a lot of great running backs. You know, here it's been Stephen Davis for such a long time. It always is nice as an offensive lineman to have a back that even when you do your job, he makes you look good, and sometimes even when you don't, he makes you look good. It's great to have a back with his talent, his explosive ability to put points on the board.
Touchdown! 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 Washington Redskins. Stephen Davis. Run by Stephen Davis. Stephen Davis with a dance in the end zone. Yes, sir.
At the dawn of the new millennium, ageless wonder Darryl Green was still performing at peak efficiency for the Washington Redskins.
I think with Darryl, you get to be around him and you take him for granted. And that's not fair, and I shouldn't say that, but you do. He's so amazing. You have to really step back and force yourself to say, hey, this guy played at 39 years old. He will be 40 years old. He puts his helmet on and his shoulder pads on, and he looks like he's 25.
Picked off by Darryl Green. He's going to the end zone. Touchdown! Washington Redskins. The Redskins win in overtime.
My mother used to say it, used to burn me up. Well, baby, mama's getting old now. I'm not getting old. The battle I think you have is in your mind. The spring that you have, the energy starts to diminish. But I think the thing, the passion and the competitive edge is the thing that I think carries you. But also, it's the talent. You have the talent, and you continue to work with it, and you just never know what you can do.
He's gone. Darryl Green's going all the way. Touchdown. Bravo to the Hall of Famer.
In 2002, Green finally ended his illustrious career. His 20 seasons and 295 games played set franchise records that may never be equaled.
It's been a great ride, and I know I'm not going to be able to thank everyone, but there's no way that I could be who I am without all of you.
Green's two-decade tenure was a sharp contrast to the revolving door of Redskin head coaches in the first years of the 21st century.
I would hate to let my era as a Washington Redskin come to an end and people look beyond my era back to those 3 Super Bowl trophies. So we have to start writing our history as a part of this Redskins tradition.
Harrington, number 56, was one of several players who excelled, even as coaches came and went. LeVar qualified for 3 Pro Bowls, and number 60, Chris Samuels, made even more as one of the league's top offensive linemen.
I want to be the best to play my position, the left tackle position. I want to change the game. You know how people say Deion's to the cornerback position. I want people to say Chris Samuels to left tackle. So I'm training just to get to my goal, make it to the Hall of Fame one day.
An NFL legend who was already enshrined in Canton hoped to turn back the clock in 2004, coming home to recapture the glory of the Redskins' golden era.
As a lifelong Redskin fan, I'd just like to introduce the head coach and team president of the Washington Redskins, Joe Gibbs.
You talk about this challenge, I kind of look at it, I didn't wear my Super Bowl ring. I got one But here's the way I look at it, really. This is all new. This is different for us. We're trying to go forward, and from this point on, we're focused on the future.
He always talks about the Redskin way. The Redskin way is a certain way for us. We believe in that. Cut us open, we bleed Redskin red, I'll tell you, because we love this place, we love our fans. This is a great city to coach in.
And to play in, as Gibbs' return attracted an impressive group of talented veterans.
It's a new year for us, a kind of a new part of Redskin history. You know, a lot of guys are from different teams and haven't played together for very long. Chemistry is critical. I mean, every team has talent. How you bring that talent together, how it comes together is very important.
One of the most vital additions was number 26 running back Clinton Portis. Portis shattered the franchise single-season rushing record in 2005, while proving he could do a lot more than simply run with the football.
Portis wants to throw, looking in the end zone, looking for Coles, touchdown! You know, Clint Portis is the man right now.
I think I'm a stand-up guy. No matter what it is, I'm gonna throw myself on the line for anybody. When you hear Clint Portis doing something, speak with me in the category with players that's consistent.
It was Portis who lit the fuse for Washington's charge into the playoffs.
Brunell gives it to Clinton Portis. Spin move at the line of scrimmage. Still on his feet. Breaks the tackle to the 15. Clears the corner to the left. He's going to go. Touchdown, Clinton Portis. And the Redskins take the lead.
A postseason berth was secured on an alert recovery by Sean Taylor, number 21.
Sean Taylor just scooped that up and go. I mean,
on the run.
He was like a shortstop with it.
He learned that at the University of Miami, I guess.
Man.
Playoffs! Playoffs here! We're going to the playoffs! Oh yeah! Oh yeah!
A week later, it was deja vu for Taylor in Tampa.
Fumble on the play, and the Redskins say they've got it.
Got it. Oh,
Marcus Washington loses it. Walt Harris, no, and Sean Taylor's got it. And he's off to the races. There are no flags. Touchdown, Sean Taylor.
He's unbelievable, isn't he? Sean Taylor? He's got a feel for the ball, doesn't he?
A young playmaker was also emerging on offense.
You come into the NFL, everyone comes from a different part of the U.S. So, you know, I'm a Southern guy, so when I first got to D.C., you know, some of the guys that were from Michigan, like John Jansen, you know, they felt like I was speaking a foreign language to them.
Come on, Jason! Moving downfield!
Campbell's skills could be understood in any language. By 2007, he had firmly seized control of the quarterback position.
From Jason Campbell, 31 yards.
Put it right in between two defensive players. And that was a perfect pass.
But after a strong start, the Redskins stumbled. By late November, the team was in a terrible tailspin.
The Redskins were 5-6 at one point. The following day, news surfaced that Sean Taylor, the Redskins' best overall player, had been shot and seriously wounded.
Breaking news to bring you this hour, the Redskins safety Sean Taylor is dead.
That word coming in from our sister station in Miami this morning, and AP confirming it.
The news of Sean Taylor's death, shocking family, friends, and fans from Miami all the way to D.C.
The heartbreak is now spreading among Redskins Nation.
There's nothing in the coach's manual that's going to prepare you for that. How do I handle this? A player just died in the middle of the season. The thing about Joe that was different from so many coaches is that he was so calm. You know, he held that together. His ability to keep the players all pulling in the same direction. It seemed that he was at his best when situations like that came up.
Sean, thanks for all you meant to us. And God take care of Sean until we get there with him. In my opinion, it was the most dramatic year in Redskins history because of everything that took place. Everybody thought that the Redskins were down for the count. There's no way they're going to recover from this. They also lost Campbell, their starting quarterback, in that Thursday night game against the Bears. So there were all of these things that were working against them.
Then the unlikeliest of heroes emerged. Veteran quarterback Todd Collins came off the bench to rally the Redskins against the Bears.
Collins under center. Looking, dumps it up the middle, caught by Betts. He's going to walk in for a touchdown.
Man, oh man, oh man. What have we found here in Todd Collins?
Collins hadn't started a game in 10 years, but this did not stop him from posting road victories against the Giants and Vikings.
I appreciate what you did tonight. Hey, you got us set.
Yeah, thank you.
Hey, I'm going to tell you, that was big time right there. Good job.
Facing a must-win situation in the season finale, Collins led the way in a rout of the top-seeded Cowboys.
Going deep, Moss open, behind the defense, touchdown Redskins! That should be the clincher.
2-1, baby. It's a 2-1. For Sean Taylor, baby. For Sean Taylor. Yeah.
That's going to do it. The Redskins victorious today after finding themselves at an emotional low at 5-7, losing Sean Taylor. The Redskins have battled back inspirationally as a team to win 4 straight and head to the playoff.
It also marked the final win in the illustrious career of the Redskins' greatest coach. At season's end, Joe Gibbs retired for good, leaving his successor a team focused on the future.
We're already competitive. I know that I'm not coming into a rebuilding program, and I'm very excited about that as well. And I know these coaches know the players very well, and I'm looking forward to getting to know all of our players and helping them to become great.
Forbes magazine has ranked the Redskins as the highest valued franchise in professional sports. But for more than 3/4 of a century, the team's #1 asset has been its fans, and they can't be measured in dollars and cents.
Whenever the Redskins play, politics, taxes, world problems, all are pigeonholed as the nation's capital, from ambassador to messenger, from clerk to cabinet officer, swarms to Griffith Stadium.
We are a culture that binds the spirit of our city. The history of Washington has bound the rich and the poor, the old and the young, the black and the white, all people from all walks of life together as much as the Redskins, and the dedication of the people to the Redskins and the dedication of the Redskins to win.
The Redskins were the thing in Washington, D.C. Everyone went to the Redskin games because they were the cream of the nation's capital.
This whole town, Washington, D.C., was virtually closed to any other thought other than that game on that day. Everybody was listening or watching the Redskins.
When a Redskins game was a social event in this town.
Everybody smile and say, Redskins! Win!
And you either had access or you didn't. Anybody can belong to the Gridiron Club, but you got Redskin tickets?
You'd think in a transition area like this with political and all the things that happen here that you'd have just a revolving door to the stadium. That's not it at all. They haven't had those tickets for 2 years or 3 years. They've had them for 20 and 30 years. They passed them down through their family.
I mean, they fought over them. Divorces, there was fights over Redskin tickets. Wills, who got left the Redskin tickets? More important, who got the parking pass?
As if by cue, the crowd comes alive. Crowd exhorted to make some noise. Long turns around to Ben Bryant and says, I can't hear. Gibbs is asking for quiet.
I've never seen a coach do that.
Here goes the snap. He's back. Going to get rushed. Sacked, Monty Coleman. Now try to quiet the crowd.
Yes, I'm the owner of the Washington Redskins, but more important, I am a trustee for the best bloody fans on the face of the earth. The Washington Redskin fans.
We're in Washington, D.C., damn it. It's our house, on our turf, baby.
For those who had an opportunity to watch the Redskins play, the noise and the intimacy between the fans and the player was unique to Washington. So that, plus being in Washington, which is a small town, and plus having all that great theater, associated with sport, made it a whole different thing, different from any other place in the league.
You played the game not only for your teammates, but you also played for the fans because they hurt when we lost, and the worst thing that we want to do was have them hurt.
When we lose on Monday, government, everything has it sluggish. Buses are sluggish going down the streets. You can't get a cab. The guy don't feel like driving that day. This is the honest truth. It's amazing.
And I think that goes with, having the tradition we had here, a winning tradition. They didn't settle for second. And so it put a lot of burden on us as players, but also made us play better, I think, because of it.
What is Redskins football? Redskins football is passion, it's appreciation. You can't talk about Redskin football without including the fans. Yes, there have been a lot of great players. They've had the 70 greatest players, listed as a part of the Redskin franchise. There's a history that's involved, there's a legacy that's involved, there's a championship that's involved. But it always seems to come back to the fans of the Washington Redskins. That's what has made this franchise so special.
I want to say a big thanks to all those fans because I, in my heart, believe you're the greatest fans. I'm going to tell you this, you're the greatest fans of all of pro sports. You made that atmosphere what it was. You were the ones that prompted these players to play like they played.